Live, welcome everybody into a brand new edition of the Brickyard Live Show. We are here to recap every single game that went down in the divisional round. We're also here to preview everything that is going to be going down in the conference championships on Sunday. Historical significance for each team going into that game, which team has the most to lose. Most importantly, just breaking down everything that happened this weekend and in between. Also, we have breaking news: Sean McDermott getting fired. You were in LA this weekend though, and you get to watch the games there. How was that? How's the experience and the vibe just going out for some games in a different city?
Oh, it's incredible. We went to Santa Monica Pier, and there's a place called Scotty McLean's that's a little bit further past the pier. That's a Patriots bar, and that's where we watched the Bills game and watched the Bills collapse for another moment in history. And as a Patriots bar, everybody was rooting against the Bills. Everybody hated the Bills there. It was electric. And then the next day, we went out for the Rams game, and it was super rowdy. We were on the Caleb Williams side. We were rooting for the Bears, but there was a bunch of Rams fans, bunch of Bears fans. It was loud. Everyone was excited. It was super sick. And LA as a city is a great, great city. I had been there once before, but for like a day. I got to spend a few days in LA, and LA is one of the best cities we have to offer in America. It's incredible. So super historic, super culture-y. It was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, California definitely has the best weather. They have the best nature of any state. They have it all. It's a little bit expensive to be there, and with like all the homeless issues, like you wonder if you're really getting the bang for your buck sometimes. But glad that that was a good time because Bills fans did not have a good time at all this weekend, and that was the
No.
first game that happened. And we can get right to the chase, but I don't think I have ever seen a bigger crash out before from any single fan base. Also, the media, too, just with the bias in this game, because to start the playoffs, you had everyone hyping up the Buffalo Bills. They're like, oh, the Patriots have not beat a winning team, even though they beat the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo on Sunday Night Football. So everyone kind of wrote them off. And then Patrick Mahomes, no Lamar, no Joe Burrow. So it seemed like this was going to be the year that the Buffalo Bills had to get it done, especially since they had a top five offensive line in the league. They had the number one rusher in the league. I don't think Tom Brady ever had the number one running back. Can you ever remember that? I don't think even Peyton Manning had the number one rusher in the league. Patrick Mahomes has never had the number one rusher in the league either. The number one pass defense heading into it. I get you didn't have Jordan Poyer there either, but still have a lot of good players on that team. And this was hyped up as a team that's like, well, there's no like Burrow or Mahomes in his past. So if you're not gonna get it done this year, when are you actually gonna do it? And then we had said going into the playoffs that they had the most pressure on them of any team heading into the divisional round. And if they didn't get it done this year, Sean McDermott was gonna get fired. And some people said, well, you could look at it this way. Well, Patrick Mahomes has been so great that the fact that they've been losing to the Chiefs every year is the only reason why Sean McDermott has kept his job because of how great Sean McDermott has Patrick Mahomes has been. So Mahomes has been keeping Sean McDermott employed maybe a couple years longer than he should have. I thought they should have fired him after, I don't know, you set a record for losing to the same team four straight times, or how about having the best defense in the league giving up a 13-second play? I don't know. Those seem like valid times.
Yeah, there's just so much heartbreak that's happened for them. And going into the season and going into the postseason, this is their year, right? We have a pretty weak. You can kind of pick holes with all the teams. The Broncos with Bo Nix. Is Bo Nix legitimate? The Steelers are old. The Texans have a bad offense. The Chargers are apart. The Patriots, it's only their second year with Drake May. And then Jacksonville had its issues too. But they beat the Jags. They go up against the Broncos. And honestly, like, this is the game they should have won. They had the lead in the fourth quarter. But the issue is mostly Josh Allen. Josh Allen was the reason he played awful in this game. He threw two picks. He had three fumbles on top of that. Just horrendous ball security in this game, which was something that you had alluded to at some point when we previewed this game, him getting a bit erratic. Their defense didn't help them very much either, putting up 33. But where do we even begin? Like, as far as failures goes, you had Josh Allen. At one point, you had Stephon Diggs. You have James Cook in this, who's a top rusher in the league, and your weapons are good enough. If you give this receiver core to Patrick Mahomes, he's winning the Super Bowl, or at least making the conference championship. You can't even make it to the conference championship the year that there's no Lamar, Joe Burrow, or Lamar Jackson. This is a complete failure, and Sean McDermott losing his job is about 2 years too late, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I thought he definitely should have been gone last year, especially after they couldn't beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, I get if they lose to another team and the Chiefs aren't there and you fire him, but this is a team that Sean McDermott is a defensive coach, right? They average 32 points a game given up to their opponent in playoff games that they lose. And then also, they've only beaten one team that has had a 13-win season, and that was last week versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. And if Cam Little didn't miss the extra point or didn't miss the field goal at the end of the half and kind of played to his standard that he'd been playing all season long, then that could have been a different story all year too. But Josh Allen had actually been pretty good for all his turnovers, how erratic he's been in the regular season. He's been pretty good as far as the playoffs, as far as turnovers. He'd only had 6 before, and I believe 3 of those came in the game versus Skylar Thompson, where they were playing the Miami Dolphins, where he had 3 turnovers in that game. He had 1 against the Cincinnati Bengals, but overall, he hadn't been a turnover machine. In this game, he was told by their offensive coordinator at the end of the half, if nothing's there, go ahead and just throw the ball away and we'll live to fight another day. And this is the thing with this game where it really does come down to that ridiculous play at the end of the half where Josh Allen is running around like a chicken with his head cut off. He gets the ball punched out, and then you give Denver a free 3 points at the end of the half, and then Denver got 16 points off of his 4 turnovers in this game. They were able to generally capitalize on them, and then he really was the reason why they kind of just gave the ball away. You can argue about the last interception, whether it was an interception or not, but for me, this game really comes down to the turnover that he had at the end of the first half, where you just give them 3 points and then you allow them to go up 10, and that gives Denver a little bit of a cushion, and then they don't end up really scoring until the last drive where they're able to force it into overtime.
Yeah, that second half was just an immediate gut punch for them because they had just scored, they had just went up, they got the touchdown lead. And then that fumble with kicking that field goal at the very end, that was the difference between them being down by a score with getting the ball back to now they're down 2 scores. It was just terrible with what we saw there. But even despite that, Josh Allen prior to this hadn't thrown an interception for 2 straight playoff runs for them. He was keeping the ball clean. He had some really great playoff games in between there as well. But whether you want to blame the defense, or I think the main focus should be on Josh Allen this game. You just can't lose to the Broncos. You had the lead. You had the lead with the fourth quarter. You're up 27-23. They score. You tie the game. You go into overtime, and then everyone wants to talk about this catch-interception controversy, which we can talk about in a second here. But it shouldn't have even come down to that. You should have stopped the Broncos. Their offense sputtered in the second half. They only scored 6 points in the second half. It shouldn't have come down to this. You shouldn't have been down 13 points in the second half. All you had to do was protect the ball, and this would be a totally different game. If there's no turnovers, they win this game by 2 scores otherwise.
Yeah, Bills fans being mad at the refs in this game, saying they get robbed, is pretty rich coming from them. I mean, you want to talk about them driving all the way down the field and then Josh Allen throwing an interception, and then it is Brandon Cooks in the air. He doesn't really come down with the ball, and then it ends up being an interception, and then they're arguing, that was definitely a catch. And then you have people crying about that. And then you also have people complaining about the 2 pass interference calls, and then you also have another late game frustration penalty on Joey Bosa, which he's had a history of doing when they lost to the Jaguars. When they came back 27-0, it was also a Joey Bosa roughing the passer call that got the Jaguars into field goal range that ended up helping them win that game. And then this game, if anyone has a right to complain about being robbed by the refs, it's the Denver Broncos. Why? Because they missed a blatant hold in the end zone that could have immediately ended the game in overtime that would have resulted in a safety. That should be the number one and only call that people are talking about in this game, because you have the audacity to be like, oh, well, that wasn't an interception. And then how can you call pass interference even though Tre'Davious White is literally grabbing his arm and not looking back for the ball before it even gets there? Like, are you kidding me? You're the ones complaining when we would have a healthy Bo Nix going into the AFC Championship if they called that safety in the end zone. The refs gave you an opportunity. They gave you a golden opportunity to drive all the way down the field, to give you a chance to score in overtime and win the game when all you needed was a field goal at that point. You'd already stopped Denver. You got the ball back, and then the refs decided to just gift you a drive and say, you know what, we're not going to end the game with the safety because we don't want to get that involved. And they gave Buffalo a chance, and then as soon as it was time to call a pass interference, that's what they did. So the fact that Buffalo and everyone is complaining that Buffalo got robbed by the refs in this game, it's like, no, Denver got robbed their quarterback playing in the AFC Championship game because they didn't call a safety in the end zone when that was clearly a hold. Like, if you don't see the screenshot of that and think that's a blatant hold, and you think the Bills were the one that got robbed in this game, like, the Bills didn't get robbed by the refs. The refs had no business not calling that play, and they literally gifted you a free drive down the field when they could have ended the game a couple of minutes ago. And then you're like, oh, well, that wasn't an interception. Like, really? Josh Allen underthrew it, and then he also missed a wide open Dawson Knox that could have walked into the end zone in that game. How about that one? And you still think, oh, he doesn't have enough help. That's the issue when he missed multiple wide open receivers in this one.
Yeah, the lid of the story has got to be missed opportunities, whether he was missing throws, whether it was throwing it to the wrong team, whether it was just being frantic in the pocket. Like, Josh Allen is the reason why the Buffalo lost this game. You get rid of those turnovers, it's a much different game. But then also, like you mentioned with Bo Nix going down, Bo Nix goes down, like, you're celebrating because you just beat the Bills and it's a huge game. Nobody believed in Denver going into this game. Everyone was picking the Bills or rooting for the Bills. And then he gets injured on the knee down, which ultimately was what injured his ankle, I believe. And now he's not going to be playing in the playoffs. We're going to see Jared Stidham against the Patriots, and we all know what's going to probably happen in that game. We'll cover that later. But Denver fans should be robbed. They're 2 wins away from a Super Bowl at this point. Bo Nix, a guy that nobody is giving his flowers to, who, by the way, played a great game in this game. 279, 3 touchdowns. He played fantastic in this game. He went toe-to-toe with Josh Allen, and he was the better quarterback in this game. 1,000%. So, if anybody got robbed, Bo Nix got robbed, and the Broncos fans got robbed.
Yeah, and I'd honestly say that Josh Allen has more help than Bo Nix. I think Josh Allen has a better run game. I think Josh Allen has better tight ends, and then what Khalil Shakur and Brandon Cooks have been doing has been on par with what Bo Nix has been getting. He had his best receiver, Pat Bryant, get injured early on in this game, and then he went out, and they had some other injury issues as far as wide receivers, and then Cortland Sutton took a little bit of time to get going. Marvin Mims got banged up in this game, so he was in and out of the lineup there, but Bo Nix was standing in the pocket. He only had one bad turnover, and this is his first playoff run too. I get the guy's like 30 years old because he played 11 years in college, but he had a great debut, and this is Denver's first win in the playoffs, I believe, since 2015 when they went to the Super Bowl and beat the Carolina Panthers there. So Bo Nix ended up going out there and played the better game, and I honestly think that Josh Allen, with his legs, and then you factor in James Cook, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, who he missed on a wide open play, like, I think Josh Allen had almost as much help as Bo Nix did.
Oh, yeah, I would agree there. Yeah, 100%. Receiver core, like, maybe Cortland Sutton's better than Khalil Shakur, but I feel like they're not far off from one another by any means. But Denver, with Bo Nix, like, Bo Nix, he diced up the defense. He was pushing the ball down the field. And their run game, like, for the most part, like, Buffalo shut down the run, which was something that they haven't done very well all season. They had the 5th most rushing yards allowed all season. They held them to 70 rushing yards on 22 attempts. And their pass defense, this defense that everyone's anointed as, like, this great pass defense. I feel like Denver did a pretty good job pushing the ball down the field, getting those first downs. Bo Nix, when he needed to, used his legs, but again, like this goes down to turnovers wise, Josh Allen playing awful at certain points. Like if you limit the turnovers, they win this game very easily. And they were right down the line. They almost had another touchdown there, and that's all ruined because of it.
Yeah, no, they were going down there, and then he threw that. The first interception that he had was really bad, where he got the route just jumped on him. And they get the turnover there. And then for Denver to drive down the field at the end of the game, I was tempering my expectations in this one. It seems like every time I pick Buffalo, they end up losing. And it's the same thing when I put them on the top five for the Brickyard, where I put them on the top five and then they lose back to back games to Atlanta and then they lose to Miami. I'm like, all right, I'm not putting Buffalo on the top five. And I had a rule like the second half of the season, like I don't buy Buffalo being a top five team. I'm not gonna put them in the top five. And guess what? They didn't look like a top five team in the divisional round either, because Josh Allen had 4 turnovers, and you can say, well, you know, the defense let him down again. Well, he still had a chance to get it done in overtime, and then he underthrew Brandon Cooks, and that's why it was turned over. He still missed Dawson Knox there, so he still had 4 turnovers, which is very uncharacteristic for him. So it's like, okay, we need to go out there and get him a wide receiver 1. Well, I've seen that with Stephon Diggs, and then you can't have a run game like you have this year and the past few years with James Cook if you go out there and pay for a wide receiver 1. So that's not the point. So he needed a run game after Stephon Diggs left, and then, okay, now we have the best rusher in the league in James Cook. He led the league in rushing. That's not enough. We had the number 1 pass defense in the league. That's not enough either. So it's like, at the end of the day, is it Sean McDermott on defense and Josh Allen? Like, it seems like it's a contribution of a little bit of both of them, because not only is it Sean McDermott's defense letting it down, but Josh Allen just seems like he gets too much in his head. He has the weird ritual where he throws up before every game. And then he also is one of the most emotional top 5 quarterbacks that I have ever seen in my life. Like, I've never seen Ben Roethlisberger, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Cam Newton, Jared Goff, like all of those guys, I've never seen them go up there and just straight up cry and be bawling their eyes out in a playoff game. I've never seen that. And this is the guy who is the first quarterback under 30 to have 8 playoff wins and not make a Super Bowl. Ben Roethlisberger did it. Russell Wilson did it. Cam Newton did it. Tom Brady did it. You go down the list, every single player under 30 who has had 8 playoff wins has made it to a Super Bowl. The only person who hasn't done that is Josh Allen.
Now, do you think like them firing Sean McDermott, right? And Sean McDermott, he had the most playoff wins of a coach not making a Super Bowl as well. Josh Allen's in that same thing as well. They've had a number of teams going their way, whether it's the Chiefs or it's the Bengals. But do you think that this is an indictment on, will Josh Allen ever win the Super Bowl? Does the coach that they end up hiring, whether it's the Bill Belichick's of the world, whether it's the Mike McDaniels or Brian Daboll, do you think that the coach could fix that for them? Or is it ultimately just a Bills thing? Because with Bills, we've talked about very much being a cursed franchise. Do you think that this has to do with the franchise, Josh Allen, or maybe it is Sean McDermott that's the problem?
I think it's a little bit of both, because Josh Allen is clearly frantic where he goes rogue at times, where there's a little bit of an element where it seems like he has Sean McDermott, who's been in his ear for his entire career, and he went rogue at the end of the half and turned it over. So it's a mix of that. And then it's also a mix of them just bringing back the same team every year. And with that, you had a lot of injuries, and Jordan Poyer was out in this game. Sean McDermott has had some meltdowns as well. And I would say about 4 years ago, I said Sean McDermott isn't the guy, because I looked at some of these big games, and in the playoffs, he wasn't really making the right adjustments. And it seemed like anytime he would run into someone like Andy Reid, now Sean Payton, Zach Taylor going up against Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, he wasn't really able to adjust, and he had a little bit of kind of that Mike Tomlin feel, except he didn't get to a Super Bowl, where he just wasn't able to make those adjustments. And I think it's a mix of Sean McDermott not necessarily being a bad coach, but not being one of the top coaches in the league, and then also Josh Allen just flat out missing guys at the end of games. So I think they're both to blame at the end of this one.
Yeah, I personally think Josh Allen can win a Super Bowl, but I don't think it's going to be with Buffalo. He's going to have to go somewhere else in an established system, somewhere like with Matt Stafford going with Sean McVay. Maybe in the future it's San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan. but I don't think he's going to win a Super Bowl in Buffalo at this point. They're going to trot it out. The worst part about this is that they fire Sean McDermott, which I think is, you and I both agree that's the right thing to do. But they elevate Brandon Beane, who has not been a very good GM for them. They've drafted 2 Pro Bowlers in that 10-year window they've had Josh Allen for the most part. They keep running back the same team over and over again. I think they should have cleaned house and brought in a new GM. Instead, they elevate him to president of operations and the GM at the same time. Like, I think that was a mistake. They're going to lead the search now. I'll be interested to see who they have, but elevating the guy that hasn't built the roster for you effectively, you give him a promotion, that's just stupid, frankly.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a little stupid, especially for Buffalo, because it does seem like this is just an organization that needs a fresh set of eyes in there and really figure out what's wrong with this team. Because you go back with Buffalo, the year they had the 13-second game, they had the best defense in the league. And I get it was Tyreek Hill in his prime, Travis Kelce also in his prime, but that was the year they had the best defense in the league. And then you have the year that they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs in 2023. You have Brandon Fish, who had fish legs in that game. He misses a field goal. And then you also have the drive at the end of the game last year where Josh Allen did have the ball in his hands, but last year it was the first time that the Kansas City Chiefs had scored 30 points all year and they lost. So it's just like these historic moments with Buffalo where this franchise is just cursed at the end of the day. And now Josh Allen hasn't won a game in overtime either. Like, you go down the list. And this is a team that also contaminates their opponent that they play. Like this game, Denver beats them. They get their first playoff win in 10 years, in over a decade. And then Bo Nix has a freak injury at the end of the game, taking a knee, and then he breaks his ankle. And then this was off of a play where the refs should have called a safety in the end zone, and then we would have had a healthy Bo Nix. The year that the Bengals beat the Bills in the divisional round, they go on and they lose to the Kansas City Chiefs after beating them the year previously. The 13-second game that the Chiefs beat the Bills in the divisional round, the Chiefs go on to blow a 21-3 lead to the Bengals in the second half of that game in another historic meltdown. So it's like, not only have the Bills been historically bad, but they contaminate their opponents that they play. And when that happens, you have to take a look at that and like, this is just a franchise that's historically cursed. You go back, they're the first team to lose 4 Super Bowls in a row, and it wasn't even close in the AFC. They were straight up dominating people. And then I'll pass it to you. Then they have like the Music City Miracle, which we now see in the commercial with Kevin Hart and LeBron James. They even have a meme about Buffalo now in that game.
Yeah, and you know what, to carry on with what you said, right? You mentioned the Chiefs and you mentioned the Bengals, but if we go even further back, they go to the AFC Championship in 2020 against the Chiefs. They go and face the Bucks in the Super Bowl and get obliterated.
Their
And
whole
then,
offensive line got injured in that game too.
yeah, so their offensive line gets shrapneled, so they get crushed by the Bucks. And then 2019, let's not also forget the Deshaun Watson Texans beat him in 2019. And what happens next? They blow a 24-0 lead to the Chiefs.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
So it just continues onward. But the thing is like, we've talked about the 4 Super Bowl losses, but let's get deeper into that, because not only that, they had the lead with 8 seconds left to kick this field goal. They win the Super Bowl. It's a 47-yarder, and it goes far right, and they lose that game. That's cementing them. They end up facing the Cowboys and losing in blowouts the remaining Super Bowls they have. And then Music City Miracle, they have the lead with 16 seconds left. They're about to win. They're about to beat them, move on to the next round. All they needed was a defensive stop, and what happens next? They do a controversial lateral pass. They score a touchdown, and the Tennessee Titans beat them in the Music City Miracle, which they now deem the Immaculate Deception. But they lose that game heartbreakingly, and it just keeps going on and on and on and on. It never ends. So it's just, with Buffalo, they're just a cursed franchise. How do they cleanse it? I don't even know if they can. I just think this is something that they're always going to have, whether it's the Texans games, whether it's the Chiefs, and the way that they've lost. As far as I'm concerned, I knew for a second that they weren't going to continue pushing the ball and continuously winning that Super Bowl as soon as the 13-second game have. Because as soon as that happens, you start having doubt across all your different teams that you have. And then what happens next? Stephon Diggs blows up. He leaves. They're not the same team. And now you face the Chiefs 4 times. You've lost 4 times there. Like, they just can't win the big game. And that's what it comes down to. Some teams just can't do it.
Yeah, and it's like the perfect pairing with Josh Allen. And Josh Allen has been probably the most hyped up quarterback by the media, where the media wants this guy to be good so bad, and I can see why. Like, Josh Allen has the talent to be the best quarterback in the league, and frankly he should be the best quarterback in the league. But I've just seen Tom Brady with worse supporting casts go farther, and Tom Brady doesn't have the legs that Josh Allen has. And then Patrick Mahomes has like the arm talent, but he's not as athletic and he's not as much of a tank that Josh Allen is. And then Josh Allen probably has a bigger arm than Patrick Mahomes too. But you just have all of these moments that come at the most inopportune time, and the fact that they also contaminate any opponent that they play too, where you mentioned the Texans losing 24-0, then the Chiefs go on to lose to the Bengals and blow a huge lead, and then the Bengals end up going on to lose to the Kansas City Chiefs. And then also, this team has only beaten one team. They're 1-6 against teams with 13 or more wins in the postseason, and the only quarterback that he's beaten that's like a legit MVP level quarterback was the Ravens with Lamar Jackson. That was twice, and when they lost to the Ravens, when the Ravens lost to them last year, that was the Mark Andrews game where Mark Andrews just flat out dropped it. And then the first one, Lamar was kind of early on in his career, but it's like, how much worse can it get?
Yeah, not only that, you know that they have the most playoff appearances of any team to not win a championship in the NFL. They have 29 playoff appearances, and they've never won a Super Bowl. It's by far the most, even more than the Vikings, who have also made it 4 times. They've
And
had
that
all
goes
these
with
eras.
Josh Allen's stat of winning 8 playoff games and being the only quarterback to not make a Super Bowl either.
Yeah, and not only that, like, you've had the OJ era, which resulted in 1 playoff win. Jim Kelly makes it 4 times, doesn't win a single Super Bowl. Josh Allen hasn't even made a Super Bowl at this point. 13 seconds was the difference between you and an AFC title game. You blow that, which is devastating. That's the shortest remaining time ever for a team to lose a playoff game while leading in NFL history. We got to witness that live, thank God. But he's been so good in the playoffs at certain points. This game was atrocious, but I just don't know if they can do it. I just think they have to blow it up. I think Josh Allen has to leave, and maybe then he wins the Super Bowl. But if you're in Buffalo, it's not going to happen.
And who would you rather have, James Cook or Jonathan Stewart?
I think I'd rather have James Cook.
Would you rather have Khalil Shakir or Ted Ginn Jr.?
I think I'd rather have Khalil Shakir.
And then would you rather have old Greg Olson or Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, both in their prime?
I'd take the two of them over the old Greg Olson for sure.
Yeah, so it's
And
like
that's
you
Cam Newton.
also look at that, like Cam Newton made a Super Bowl where that year he won the MVP in 2015 was probably one of the most remarkable individual performances I've ever seen. And Josh Allen has a better arm. He has a better completion percentage than Cam Newton did. But even Cam Newton dragged the Carolina Panthers all the way to a Super Bowl. He hasn't been as efficient as far as getting to Super Bowls. He hasn't really had as much help as Josh Allen has had either, though. And the fact that he was able to drag that Carolina Panthers all the way to the Super Bowl. And then, did you know Josh Allen is the first player to have 2 interceptions and 2 fumbles in a playoff game, and the last player to do that was Carson Palmer in that Carolina Panthers conference championship game when Carson Palmer had 6 turnovers.
Oh my God, that's just awful. Yeah, it just keeps piling up for them, for them all around. They had a 17-year playoff drought. They had multiple win and in failures where they could have made it. They don't. They've lost to Mahomes multiple times. They've also, the fact that they've beaten Mahomes pretty much every time in the regular season at the same time, adding insult to injury, because I believe he's 5-5 against Mahomes entirely. but he's
Yeah.
only beat him in the regular season. He has not beat him in the postseason once. And each game has been by a field goal in most cases.
Yeah, Mahomes beat Josh Allen the first time they played each other in the regular season. Josh Allen has won every game since, and that was the. Did you have like the sound on for this game? Like, could you hear anything Tony Romo was saying?
Oh, yeah, it was
Like
awful.
Tony
I hated
Romo
it.
kept saying, like, well, there's no Lamar Jackson, there's no Joe Burrow, and there's no Patrick Mahomes, but well, Jim, he did beat those teams in the regular season, so you really can't say it's an easy cakewalk to the Super Bowl. Where they were already trying to come up with excuses for the Bills to not make this, to not if they won the Super Bowl that oh well, it wasn't against Burrow, Lamar, or Patrick Mahomes, so they're trying to make excuses for those guys not being in the way in the playoffs, where he's like, well, he did beat those guys in the regular season, Jim, so you can't really say it's an easy pass because he beat them and he's the reason why some of them aren't playing in the playoffs right now. But also, Joe Burrow was hurt for most of the season and he didn't have a defense. Lamar Jackson's Ravens just fired their coach because they quit on John Harbaugh, and then the Chiefs had one of the worst teams that they have ever had, so I get he beat them in the regular season, but the actual argument is that he can't beat them in the playoffs. And also, who's to say that if he played the Patriots or the Texans that he would have won, with the fact that he's only beat one 13-win team, and that was this year versus Trevor Lawrence, of all people, in Jacksonville. And then at the same time, he is 0-3 versus the Texans. And the worst game he had all season, Josh Allen had no touchdowns and 2 interceptions on Thursday Night Football versus the Houston Texans. Then that was the worst game that he had all year. And then people were like, oh yeah, he's definitely going to go out there and beat the Texans. And then everyone also picked the Texans to beat the New England Patriots. Pretty much everyone also picked the Buffalo Bills to beat the Denver Broncos as well.
Yeah, they just had Buffalo immediately in the Super Bowl. And you and I both had our doubts. Like, I like James Cook and I like Josh Allen, but their defense is bad. And then when it comes down to it, when they needed him, they had Josh Allen. He had multiple drives, whether it was end of the regular half or into overtime, where they blew it ultimately. Whether it was the interception, whether it was other drives at the end of the fourth quarter, like they just didn't deliver, and that's what ultimately cost them. Ultimately.
Yeah, and the most glaring stat out of all of these for Josh Allen, you go down the list, he's 1-6 versus 13-win teams in the playoffs. He has lost to the Chiefs 4 straight times, which is more than any player has lost to the same opponent consecutively in the playoffs. But the most glaring stat of all is he's 0-7 in his career in overtime games. 0-7. And the fact that at the end of the Chiefs game last year, he had the ball in his hands to do something with it, he didn't do it. He could have come up with a big drive at the end of that game last year. He could have done it, but he's 0-7 in his career in overtime, and they literally changed the rules because of the 13-second game, and Buffalo cried so much. Sean McDermott was on his soapbox giving his civil rights speech after that catch that shouldn't have been an interception and shouldn't have been a catch now. And I was like, okay, we literally changed the rules so Buffalo had a better chance to get to the Super Bowl with Josh Allen after, and it still hasn't changed anything. So what rule are we going to change now because Josh Allen is 0-7 in overtime? If he throws an interception, does it count for the other team where we're just going to ban Josh Allen being able to throw interceptions? Is that what we're going to do to have to get him over the hump and into the Super Bowl now?
Yeah, they're going to have to do something, but Josh Allen, his game, just abysmal. A lot of changes to be done. Who do you think is their coach next year now that they fired Sean McDermott? Is there anybody that fits them? It feels to me like Brian Daboll is going to be in the mix there, like we mentioned before, but anybody that shouts out to you that might fix their issues in the future?
Brian Daboll would be the second funniest option, and I think that would be hilarious that Brian Daboll would be there because Josh Allen had his probably sloppiest, most turnover-heavy years under Brian Daboll, and keep in mind that Josh Allen since 2020 leads the league in turnovers as well. If you factor in the regular season. But having Brian Daboll, I think that would be just an absolute disaster because I think Josh Allen is better when you focus on the run game. But I think Clint Kubiak has to be the guy. If you fire Sean McDermott, you have to go young, then you have to go offensive-minded head coach. We're trying to find our Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur type coach for Josh Allen, and I think that is going to be Clint Kubiak, especially what he has done with Sam Darnold this year, where a lot of people were doubting that Sam Darnold could keep that momentum going from Minnesota going to Seattle, and then he turned Jackson Smith and Jigba into the best wide receiver this year. This has been the best I've ever seen Zach Charbonnet or Kenneth Walker look this season, and Seattle's offense has taken a step forward under him. So I think if you're looking at who do we want to be our next head coach, we want to go with the young, best offensive guy we can get it. And if you can't, you go out there and get Bill Belichick, because this was something I floated around. I think it was 2 years ago when I was saying that they should fire Sean McDermott because they had another flame out in the playoffs versus the Kansas City Chiefs that we picked again. Who would have thought? And then I was like, you know what would be funny? Bill Belichick leaves the Patriots, and then with as bitter as he's been with the stories coming out where he's not letting any Patriots personnel go down to Chapel Hill to scout in North Carolina. I think it would be funny if Bill Belichick was the Bills' next head coach. Bill on the Bills.
It would be hilarious. It would make sense that Buffalo would make a move like that. And also, it would be awful because Bill Belichick, 73 years old, if we're going to bully the Raiders with what they did with Pete Carroll, I mean, we saw what he did with University of North Carolina. It was not pretty there, but it would make a lot of sense for Buffalo to go after that. It's a desperate move. So I would be rooting for that to happen. I think that'd be funny. But that being said, I think Clint Kubiak's a great hire there. It's a shame Kevin Stefanski took his job with Atlanta because I think Kevin Stefanski would have been a good fit there for him. But that passes through. If they want to stick with defense, I think Brian Flores could be a fine hire there. But I'm rooting for Bill Belichick. That would be hilarious just for the NFL to see.
Yeah, I don't think you can go with defense. Like, you've seen what it's been like with the defensive head coach. If you want someone, though, who will just go out there and get in Josh Allen's face and kind of bully him into being like a franchise quarterback, and take it to the next level, I think Robert Saleh, if you're going to go defense, would be a really good guy. The fact that he took the Jets to multiple 7-win seasons when you look at that roster, and with how they immediately flamed out under Aaron Glenn, then as soon as he got fired, that entire organization fell apart. Like, honestly, I think Robert Saleh would be a solid option for the Bills.
I would agree. I think Robert Saleh is a great head coach. I'm curious to see if he takes any of these head coaching jobs now that their season is over for the 49ers. I think he'd be a great fit for Buffalo there. I'm also curious if they'd make a move for someone like A.J. Brown, who looks like he could be out the door in Philly. Do they make that swing and go for for A.J. Brown? That's another thing I'm curious about. I think they should.
Yeah. I don't think so. I think you still have to go with the draft because we've seen Josh Allen can't handle someone with a personality like Stephon Diggs. And as soon as Stephon Diggs left, Josh Allen did the whole like, oh, wow, it's nice that we don't have one guy and they're demanding the ball and everyone's just happy that they get the ball when they get it. It's like that kind of turned me off with Josh Allen, where he couldn't really handle the Stephon Diggs situation, where the fact that Ben Roethlisberger was able to deal with that many personalities and hang on as long as he did with Antonio Brown is a miracle.
100%. With all the talent that they had, I would agree. There's a lot of things that Buffalo has to figure out moving forward, and it'll be interesting to see what they do this offseason. That being said, though, congrats to the Broncos. Moving on, they played great, but I want to talk about the Seahawks-Niners game real quick because of all the games that we had, this game was definitely the biggest blowout by far. That Seahawks defense ripped them to shreds. We had George Kittle out in this game. Quickly on in the game, we had Juwan Jennings get banged up. Christian McCaffrey was in the medical tent at one point. All of the injuries for the Niners, which we had predicted, caught up to them. And what we were left with was a complete and utter massacre for the 49ers. And the Seahawks moving on without really needing to do anything for Sam Darnold. The running game was amazing in this game. Kenneth Walker had a legacy game, dare I say. But it all comes down to that defense and what they were able to do, getting that pick six. What was your thought on this Seahawks and Niners game?
Yeah, it was a absolute wall-to-wall demolition, and I think Tom Brady summed this game up as well as anyone could have, where he said, at this point, the 49ers team bus should be an ambulance. and that just resonated with me. Or during the broadcast, he was throwing out shots, but just the middle of the, Seattle Seahawks defensive line was impenetrable. You weren't able to run the ball on them at all. And then the 49ers, it seemed like they actually had a shot at this game where it was 17-0 at one point, but you had the drive where they went for it on fourth down, and then Kyle Shanahan had a terrible call where we're going to run some motion out to the outside, and then Juszczyk tries to flip it out to Christian McCaffrey. They're all over it, where I think they should have just done a direct snap where you do like a tush push with Christian McCaffrey. And then you had the Jake Tunges fumble where he fumbles the ball, and then it kind of just all avalanche from there, where it seemed like Seattle actually had a chance in the first half, or the 49ers had a chance to come back against Seattle in the first half, but the Seahawks just capitalized on every single turnover, and then Kenneth Walker just going berserk. But as soon as I saw the Rashid Shaheed touchdown return on the first play of the game, I was just like, oh God, this is going to be a long game. It reminded me when Percy Harvin returned the first play of the Super Bowl versus Denver in 2013. I was like, that's what we're doing this game? This is just going to be a wall-to-wall blowout against the 49ers. And I felt bad because it did feel like at one point the 49ers had a chance to come back, but Brock Purdy was just doing the most he possibly could, and then the last straw was just Christian McCaffrey getting injured, and then I believe he had like a pectoral injury, and then George Kittle getting hurt last week. So I think San Francisco tried as much as they could to weather the storm, but Seattle just looked like a wrecking ball in this game where Sam Darnold didn't really have to do too much. He made every single pass when he needed to, but yeah, it was just a wall-to-wall blowout, and then San Francisco couldn't weather the storm at all. But I did think in the first half they had a couple opportunities to make this a real game.
I agree, and I honestly think, like, you look at the stat line for Brock Purdy, it looks like he had a pretty rough game. I think Brock Purdy played a fine game. He had some pretty nice plays in there. He made some nice third down conversions, but the Seahawks just weren't letting them get anything done. You look at the stat line. Christian McCaffrey has 35 rushing yards. You expect him to get at least 100 each and every game. But again, I saw that Rashid Shaheed play. Very first play of the game, it's a kick return touchdown. That was a nightmare. And then, but ultimately by the end of the first half, like they had a lead. It was 16. It was 6-17 at one point. You thought maybe there was a chance for a comeback, but just wall to wall. We had two legacy games, one for Rashid Shaheed, who I think we finally see what he's worth for that Seattle Seahawks team. He had a big 30-yard run. He had that kick return touchdown. He was awesome. And then Kenneth Walker, a guy who I feel like is a super underrated running back for them. Zach Charbonnet goes down. He's out for the season. Kenneth Walker steps in. 3 touchdowns, rushes for 120, gets some more through the air as well. But shout out to those guys. Shout out to that Seahawks defense. We know what they do when there's a new Pope administered for them, and I think we might be seeing a Seahawks Super Bowl in the near future because of it.
Yeah, no, that was definitely a convincing win. And, the 49ers, like, they tried as hard as they could, but we had mentioned the Rashid Shaheed pickup, which flew under the radar for a lot of teams where, like, watch this Rashid Shaheed pickup. This is going to come back in the playoffs, and he's going to have a massive kick return, and it's really going to come back to help them. And I think he had a massive play when they played the Rams, and now this is a guy who you can use in motion, where you just have him run around in the backfield just to cause some distractions. And it helps Sam Darnold to tell whether a team's like in zone coverage or man coverage, so he can kind of use Rashid Shaheed as just that piece in motion to figure out what the defense is doing. And then you have these explosive plays where he can get a kick return to really set the tone here. But yeah, I don't know, like the Rams run game kind of disappeared versus the Chicago Bears, and we'll get to that game. So I'm not exactly sure what they're going to be able to do against Seattle, because Seattle, they looked really good in the regular season, and it felt like they are kind of building up each week, which you can tell is kind of the mark of a great team. And then the track record of a second-year head coach making it to a Super Bowl is actually very high when you take a look at Mike McDonald. And then the fact that he did this against the 49ers, this ties the second highest intra-division playoff blowout of all time, you have to go back to 1968, where that was the last time where two teams met in division in the playoffs, and it was a 35-point victory. So they have the highest total win versus a divisional opponent. And I honestly I wanted the Eagles to win last week because I knew if the 49ers played the Seahawks, we were kind of going to get this. But even if Philadelphia went to Seattle, I don't think the game would have looked that different.
Yeah, I think that would have blown out the Eagles as well. Just on both sides, there's so much to like about this defense. Devon Witherspoon, you have Tariq Woolen there, who's been awesome for them. Boye Mafe has been awesome for them. Ernest Jones has been good for them. Like, all around that offense and defense is just great. And I think it's also good the fact that Sam Darnold was going in there with an oblique injury. We didn't know whether we were going to see him or Drew Lock. You didn't ask much for him. He didn't have to do all that much. He still got the job done, so credits to him. Now he gets an extra week where he can rest. That oblique, get that to full strength before they face the Rams. But all around, there's really nothing I can poke holes in for this Seahawks team. This team, if I'm the Rams, I'm petrified, especially with what we saw with that Bears game. I think we could be seeing a rematch of the 2014 Super Bowl potentially.
We could be, and it tracks with the Pope stat where every time a new Pope has been appointed in 2005, 2013, and now this year they've been the number one seed. The previous two times they made the Super Bowl, but you essentially get back-to-back bye weeks for the Seattle Seahawks, where you come back from a bye, and this is the best scenario possible, where it really just serves as a tune-up. And then we had kind of been predicting heading into the playoffs that we're probably going to see Seattle and LA 2 in the conference championship, and then we thought it could be Buffalo versus New England, but we definitely were leaning there's a much higher chance that it's going to be Seattle and the Rams heading into it, and that's what we got right now. Sometimes the obvious pick is what's going to happen, and now the Rams head in there, and this is a Seattle team where does this worry you that they beat the 49ers this badly with the Rams coming off two one possession wins, one in overtime, and then one drive at the end of the game versus the Carolina Panthers, who came into the playoffs 8-9? Or do you think this is just good that Seattle went out there and dominated them?
I think it's just good they went out and dominated. Everyone's going to be confident. Sam Darnold's going to be rested up. And in that trilogy, like both of these games went down to the wire. The Seahawks pulled it out last time. The Rams edged it out game one. Now that we get a trilogy, I think it's going to be great. I think it's hard to say how that game's going to fare. We'll cover that later on in the show. But each of those games have been battles. And if it wasn't for Sam Darnold's 4 picks the first game, then they probably win both of those games and end up sweeping the series potentially. So I think it's good they blew them out. For the Rams, they have a lot to worry about after what we saw with the Bears game, but I think it's good they blew them out. The Seahawks did.
Yeah, and this was really one of the only no contests, and this is the first no contest that we've seen in the NFC, where every NFC game was a one possession game last week, and then every other game this week was pretty much a one possession game, except for the Patriots and the Texans. And this was another game where every single person before the game on NFL Live, whatever they call that garbage show on ESPN that doesn't know dick about football, did, but it was like the one with Mina Kimes. It's like Marcus Spears, Dan Orlovsky, that sad son of a bitch. And then you have every single person on that panel pick the Houston Texans to win that game. I picked the Patriots heading into this one because I just liked the matchup of New England's defense versus the Houston Texans offense better than I like the Texans defense versus the Patriots offense. I was worried about Drake May's fumbling issues, especially that he had versus the Chargers, and that did come up in this game. But I thought that New England was going to be able to run the ball well enough to take some pressure off him, and I thought if either team was going to have a score on defense, it was most likely going to be the New England Patriots, and that's exactly what happened in this game. And then after this game, this season, Drake May is the first quarterback to have 3 passing touchdowns versus the Houston Texans' #1 rated defense on the road this year. That only gave up 14.9 points on the road, but he had that 4th and 1 play to Demario Douglas. he had the Stephon Diggs catch, which was ridiculous, and then maybe the catch of the playoffs, Kayshon Boutte. What a
Oh my
touchdown grab from
God.
him. He just stretches out one arm. He brings it in with his fingertips. The crowd goes wild, and that pretty much blows the door open on this game. But Drake May, what are your thoughts on him coming into this game? He still had some fumble issues, but he's now the first quarterback to have 3 passing touchdowns versus this defense.
Yeah, it wasn't a perfect game for him, but when it mattered, when they needed to get a third down conversion, they did. The running game was good. Drake May got a few first downs with his legs. I don't love the fumble issues. I think that if they were to make it to the Super Bowl, the Seahawks are going to take advantage of that. Broncos could be taking advantage of that next game because we saw how good they were post turnover for the Bills. So that does worry me. That being said, he did play a fairly efficient game passing the ball. He did throw that one pick ultimately, but otherwise was pretty clean passing the football. I am still worried about the fumbling issues. But for a kid that's 23 in his second year, the fact that he's bringing his team to the AFC title game, I think that's incredible for them. Mike Vrabel, what he's doing in year one, out of this world. Definitely coach of the year at this point for them. But, I mean, everybody stepped up. The receiver core, which we've had our issues with in the past, they stepped up when it mattered. We had a huge game, legacy game for Kayshon Boutte. And then Ramondre Stevenson was able to plug up the gut, have some good running plays in there as well. So ultimately, it wasn't the sexiest win, but it showed to me that Drake May can shake it off, make some big throws when it matters, and that defense is a lot better than we give it credit for.
Yeah, no, it's a lot better than what I gave it credit for. And what if I told you they're tied for the only team in the 21st century to hold a team through their first 2 playoff games to 1 offensive touchdown.
That's insane.
And then they
Yeah.
also had 5 takeaways in this game, and they had 14 passes defended in this game, which is the most by any team in a playoff contest since the 2004 Eagles, which put up 17. So they knocked down 14 passes in this game. They had, I believe, they had 5 takeaways. I believe all of those were interceptions from CJ Stroud. So a lot of people were talking about Houston's defense, how great the Texans defense was going to be. But I'm like, the Patriots are at home, and the Texans struggled in that fourth quarter until that fourth quarter where they had a pick 6 and a fumble returned for a touchdown. So I'm like, I think New England at home is going to be able to get the better of the Texans when it comes to just the matchup of the Patriots defense versus the Texans offense. And that's exactly what happened. I'm like, Woody Marks is not going to lead all running backs as far as total rush yards this year, even though he did have a rushing touchdown this one. I'm like, Charlie Kirk is not going to go off and have another huge game and go for 8 catches and 144 yards because we have someone named Christian Gonzalez and then also Carlton Davis, who had some of the most ridiculous interceptions in this game. This might be the best game I've ever seen from Carlton Davis. He had some legendary games with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers where he came up big, but this game, he was kind of the MVP of the Patriots on defense, and then Milton Williams playing excellent again, where CJ Stroud just looked absolutely lost. And then people were trying to rush to his defense at halftime. Well, it's not really CJ Stroud's fault in this game, and I get they didn't have Nico Collins in this game, but it's not like the Patriots have the best receivers on their side either.
No, absolutely. CJ Stroud, I did feel bad for it at one point in the game. He was missing wide open throws. The climate was really rough. They were in snowy weather. That didn't help, but he also threw some really bad balls. And he threw 4 picks in this game, all in the first half. I counted at least 5 other passes that could have very easily been intercepted. At one point, I debated whether they should be starting Davis Mills at that point into the second half because he just looked lost. He looked scared. He looked petrified at one point. And part of it was sad. I mean, he completed 40% of his passes. He was missing wide open throws. And CJ Stroud maybe isn't a top 10 quarterback in the league, but he's a good quarterback. He's a franchise guy. You're happy to have him. And the way that he performed this game was just abysmal. I think a lot of this goes out to the Patriots defense, though. And Carlton Davis, you shouted him out. He played excellent. 2 interceptions. Marcus Jones with the pick 6 in this game as well, who also had a great game. Some big kick returns there as well. But just CJ Stroud, missing wide open throws, playing horribly. Um, I hope he can shake it off, but this was a rough. This is one of the worst games I've seen from C.J. Stroud by far.
It's not only the worst game you've seen from CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud literally had the worst postseason run of any quarterback in history. He's the only quarterback to finish a single postseason with 5 interceptions and 5 fumbles, and he only played 2 games. And one of those was versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's the only quarterback to do it. So he literally had the worst postseason of all time, where this guy in his rookie year, people were saying he's a top 5 quarterback. I bought into the hype as well, and he looked really good when he was running those crossing routes with Tank Dell and Nico Collins. They're really lighting it up, and then he had a couple of years where, you have the offensive line, and they struggled, and now he literally has the worst run ever, and he just saved the Texans $100 million, because now the Texans have every right not to give this guy a $200 million contract. This guy will be lucky if he gets over $150 million, or if the Texans even decide to go forward with him. Because now, if you're D'Amico Ryans, you're in a really tough spot where you've gotten to the playoffs every single year that you've been with the Texans. You only had 2 players on that defense that were on the team before you got there, and then you now had the #1 ranked defense, and your defense honestly played pretty well if you take away that pick 6 from CJ Stroud. It would have been probably a manageable game, and I don't know, if you take away the 5 turnovers in this game, it definitely would have been a manageable one. And then Drake May goes out there, and he's the first quarterback to throw 3 touchdowns against this team, but their defense was still giving them troubles. Will Anderson knocked the ball out of Drake May's hand 3 times in this one. Danielle Hunter was still a monster in this one, so the defense wasn't the problem. So now if you're the Texans, you are the only team in the NFL that hasn't been to a conference championship. You have not won a divisional round game, so you're essentially the Marvin Lewis of the divisional round as far as the NFL franchise. So now if you look at it, is it going to be D'Amico Ryans? Do you have to take a look at potentially trading up in the draft and possibly trading CJ Stroud this offseason, see if another team kind of take phone calls and see who's interested and wants to pay him? Because when they beat Buffalo on Thursday Night Football, it was with Davis Mills starting.
I think there's a lot of things you consider. For CJ Stroud, I think he's a solid enough quarterback that moving forward, maybe you give it one more year with him. But I also see a scenario where maybe they do call the Arizona Cardinals and they say, hey, you take CJ, we take Kyler Murray, you eat some of the contract, we take Kyler Murray for maybe a cheaper deal. I think Kyler Murray with them, when you have Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Jaden Higgins, Dalton Schultz, that could be interesting. That would make their offense a little more dynamic, make their running game a little bit better. I would make a call and see if that's available for them. Maybe it is drafting his replacement. Are they going to pick up his 5th-year option? I don't know if you want to. I mean, you're going to have to pay him $30 million if you do that. Is he worth it? So far, I think, in those other 2 playoff games, I think he played fine. The last 2 playoff runs that they've had. But if you can't win in the divisional round and not make the conference championship, how long can you stick around with this guy? He's young. I think there's definitely a market for CJ. I call the Arizona Cardinals, and I say, hey, what do you want for Kyler Murray? We'll give you CJ Stroud and a 3rd-round pick. Eat some of the contract. And I would make that trade today, 100%.
Or the Texans, a team. Yeah, because if you're looking to move on from CJ Stroud and you have the defense intact right now, Danielle Hunter's in his 30s, so he's going to be in his prime for a couple more years. You want to have a manageable cap situation where you can potentially think about drafting a quarterback and developing someone. Are you a team that calls Aaron Rodgers next year and says, hey, we just need someone who won't turn the ball over and literally have the worst postseason run in NFL history with 5 fumbles and 5 interceptions? Because one thing about Aaron Rodgers is, sure, he had the pick 6 and he had the fumble in that game, but the Steelers' offense really just isn't that great. But I think if you had a healthy Aaron Rodgers in Houston, Davis Mills as his backup, and you potentially draft a quarterback you think can be your future, but one thing is you can't pay CJ Stroud, so is that a conversation you have?
Absolutely. I would call up Aaron Rodgers. He's not going to turn the ball over. He's a veteran. He can shake it off. He's had playoff success. I would absolutely call it Aaron Rodgers. try to trade C.J. Stroud. I'm sure the Vikings would love to have C.J. Stroud as well. So I think it's the conversation you look at this offseason. Nick Caserio and that team for the GM, see if there's a move that they can make. Aaron Rodgers would be a fine fit if he wants to keep playing and the Steelers don't want to bring him back. Why not? That defense is absolutely a championship defense. They gave the Patriots a bunch of trouble. You take out those even if they have half of those turnovers, this could very well have been a Texans win that we're looking at instead of a loss, very easily.
Yeah, because it's one of those situations where now you put more pressure on Drake May, and he has to think about it a little bit more. And then some of the the playbook definitely gets a lot tighter, and then you put the Patriots in a tougher situation in that game. But for a team in the Texans that was pretty much the unanimous favorite by everyone coming into this game, it was like 3-1 on the panel picking the Houston Texans before this game. You had everyone on ESPN's pre-show on Friday pick the Texans, and because we didn't think CJ Stroud is actually that bad, but CJ Stroud has kind of been trying to tell us who he is the past 2 NFL seasons. In that rookie season, seems like it really got into his head where there's just something wrong with his game right now, where anytime he's under pressure, he panics and he makes bad throws. Like, the perfect example is the pick six that he had. And now the Houston Texans are a young franchise, but the fact that this team has never made it to a conference championship is a little bit ridiculous. And the fact that you had the narrative, well, the Patriots, they haven't beat, a team with a winning record except for the Buffalo Bills. That's an outlier because it's like a divisional game. Well, they beat the Chargers. The Chargers are historically cursed. Justin Herbert sucks. He didn't have an offensive line. We give him a pass there. But now they go out there and they don't just beat the Texans. Their defense bullies the Texans offense and has a historic output where now they have the most pass defenses of any team since the 2004 Philadelphia Eagles, who I believe made the Super Bowl and lost to the Patriots that year.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, that Patriots defense is no joke. Christian Gonzalez is probably the best corner in the NFL. Bob Spillane made some big plays there. Marcus Jones, historic game for him. He played incredible. He had multiple huge punt returns for them. He played incredible. So, I mean, this defense is no joke. They invested all this money in them in the offseason, $240 million. And it seems like every single person they signed was a hit. Carlton Davis had 2 picks in this game. Bob Spillane made some big tackles for a loss. Christian Gonzalez shut down their best player. So, absolutely, this defense is a wagon. I think that this team can give a lot of trouble to the Denver Broncos next week. And then whoever they face potentially in the Super Bowl also. I think this Patriots defense is a championship-winning defense, 100%.
Yeah, and really the only issue with this team has been Drake May's fumbles. But I feel like we have to give a lot of credit to Mike Vrabel because it seems like people are already trying to spin the narrative and make excuses like, oh, well, the Patriots have a cupcake walk to the Super Bowl now because now they're going to play the Broncos without Stidham, and then they're potentially going to play Sam Darnold in the Super Bowl, or they're going to play Matt Stafford. But now they're already spinning the narrative. It went from the Patriots haven't beat a winning record, look at the strength of schedule, to, oh, well, they beat the Chargers without their offensive line. They just beat the Texans, and C.J. Stroud had the worst postseason in history. But this was a team where everyone picked the Texans in this game. But we have to give a lot of credit to just Mike Vrabel out-coaching Jim Harbaugh, out-coaching DeMeco Ryans in this game, and he has been the one that's been the real factor that's turned this team around. When you have the right quarterback and the right coach, the Patriots aren't the most talented team on offense, but they know exactly what they need to do. And then Drake May is someone who already understands that sometimes winning is boring. It doesn't need to be a flashy play. You don't need to go out there and try and do too much and then force the play downfield. He still had some fumble issues in this game, but Drake May is fine just taking whatever the defense is going to give him. He didn't force too many passes in this game, and then the throw he had to Booty was ridiculous. The touchdown to Stephon Diggs, and then as soon as he had that 4th-and-1 conversion to Demario Douglas where he just ran wide open into the end zone, I'm like, okay. This is going to be a real good game because I picked the Patriots to win this game, but I didn't feel good about it at all. And the fact that this game was just a complete domination from front to back. I mean, last week you had Chargers players coming up to Bob Spillane saying, we don't know what you're doing on defense and we couldn't figure it out during the game. Like, how do you think CJ Stroud with his low IQ tests in the combine is going to do against the Patriots defense?
Yeah. No, it was incredible. And Drake May, like, I think Drake May overall had a good game. He made some big throws when it mattered. That defense, that coverage that they have, Mike Vrabel, who's won multiple Super Bowls as a player, he could become the first uh, player to coach the same team he won Super Bowls with ever. So he could be potentially be the first guy to coach the team that won the Super Bowl with. So I think that's going to be big. But Patriots are a wagon. I think a lot of the people who hate the Patriots right now, they have all the fuel they want. They beat the Chargers without an offensive line. They beat the Texans without Nico Collins, and now they're going to face Jarrett Stidham in the AFC title game. Like, luckily I'm a Patriots fan and I'm happy to see it. But as a NFL fans are fuming at the thought of a Patriots Super Bowl again. And no matter who they match up with, it will be a rematch in the Super Bowl potentially.
Yeah, I don't think like Stidham is necessarily a horrendous quarterback. Do you remember the game with the Raiders where he had 400 yards versus the Chiefs when they're the #1 defense that year?
Yeah,
Like,
it's
he's
gonna
no
be.
slouch. And then Mike
Yeah, he's
Vrabel
gonna,
talked about how they were scouting, and he had called Jarrett Stidham's agent, potentially scouting him to be the backup quarterback. They end up going with Josh Dobbs, but he thought very highly of Jarrett Stidham, and Jarrett Stidham's no slouch. And the Patriots are 0-7 in Denver, too. So they've never
yeah,
won in the playoffs. So they've never won a playoff game in Denver. You had that famous game where it was the year that the Patriots just blew the game against the Jets, where Bill Belichick gave it away. It was the year the Jets were 10-6 with Matt Forte, Brandon Marshall, and Eric Decker, and then that was the reason why the Patriots weren't at home in Gillette, and then Peyton Manning got to the Super Bowl that year.
yeah. That was the year that the Patriots. I think they blew a 10-point lead as well in that game, if I'm not mistaken. But Denver's been the house of horrors. That was also where they had their first playoff loss for Tom Brady. He lost to Jake Plummer in the Broncos. Denver's, if there's any team that's given the Patriots the most hell, it's probably the Broncos, honestly. It's either them or the Ravens, I would say, but definitely the Broncos, especially in Mile High. I don't know if you know this or not, but there's elevation in Denver, so that's going to be a problem for them, but I still think they get it done. I still think we will preview it in a few minutes, but I think they get the win against the Broncos, and I think they overcome that battle. But Patriots showed me they have a great defense, and Drake May, of the remaining quarterbacks, he might be the best quarterback available right now, left in this game.
Yeah, I mean, he's clutch in this game, and then he can do it with his legs as well. I'd probably still give it to Stafford. I said coming into the playoffs that Stafford was probably going to be the best quarterback in the playoffs, and he showed that. But Drake May, definitely impressive, and it's impressive that the Patriots were able to run it with Ramondre Stevenson, everything they were able to do against that Texans defense, being the first player throw 3 touchdowns versus that defense all year long. When Josh Allen, when he played the Houston Texans defense, had no passing touchdowns and 2 interceptions. So like the difference is clear as day. The difference between I feel like Josh Allen and Drake May is, first of all, Josh Allen wasn't good until year 3. Drake May is going to be in the conference championship in year 2, and he's younger than Josh Allen was at that point. And then also, he's someone that just seems very chill. He's not too emotional. He's not going to be crying in a press conference if he loses. And he's going to be taking exactly what the defense gives him. He's not going to really force anything. He does have the fumbling issues in the pocket, but overall, he doesn't have that same issues just forcing the ball down the field that Josh Allen did. And he wasn't wildly inaccurate his first 2 seasons, where when he threw it to Booty, it was on a rope, and that was the only place that he could get it.
Yeah, not only that with Drake May is, and I think we can zoom out from Josh Allen. We can also look at other quarterbacks. Lamar, we can say this too. We can say this with Caleb. We can say this with Jalen Hurts. We can say this with Jordan Love. A number of other quarterbacks, Justin Herbert as well. He doesn't play hero ball, which I think is the biggest thing. The reason why I think he ends up delivering is he's okay with taking the check down. He's okay with not having to go for the big play. He just wants to get the first down, move the chains. And I feel like there's not a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL that do that. I think even Mahomes could be guilty of that from time to time, Stafford even. But the fact that he's willing to take the check down, move the chains, I think that's a very valuable trait that he has that few quarterbacks in the league have.
Yeah, and with Josh McDaniels too, like you look at Josh McDaniels when you're talking about someone who is not really a great head coach, but he's just one of the best coordinators in the league. And I feel like a lot of guys like Mike McDaniels or other coordinators can go forward and take a look at that. Like, you don't have to be the best head coach or a head coach to necessarily make a huge impact on a team. Josh McDaniels hasn't been a good head coach, but as an offensive coordinator, he's been amazing, and I think we can now say it wasn't just Brady, and the fact that him and Mike Vrabel has also been able to kind of develop this relationship together and turn this team around. Like, Mike Vrabel's a defensive guy, so it really, a lot of the ownership on offense is going to be Josh McDaniels, and then Mike Vrabel is a very direct but fair head coach where he's going to point out what you did wrong, but he's not Bill Belichick where it seems like it's more cold shoulders, moody and aggressive, where he's a good guy to be around. He's very direct, and he's a firm but fair head coach, which I feel like is great.
Yeah, and I feel like for the Patriots, moving on from the Belichick era the way they have, they get Mike Vrabel, who I think is the more modern version of Bill Belichick, player friendly, fair, but still very defensive oriented, still very details oriented, and then keeping Josh McDaniels, who I think is going to go down as one of the best coordinators of all time. I think you can also shout out Steve Spagnuolo on the defensive side as far as
Wade
great
Phillips,
coordinators.
too.
Wade Phillips, another great comparison there. Like, some coaches I think are just better when they're focused in on one part of the ball. And head coach, it takes more than just your expertise on one side or the other. I think it also comes with who you hire, leading the locker room, motivating people. Maybe Josh McDaniels isn't a great head coach, but as a coordinator for the Patriots, I mean, he's been incredible, and he's coordinated other places and he's been successful. But like, he's going to go down as the greatest coordinator of all time, or one of the greatest coordinators of all time. So Josh McDaniels also deserves a lot of praise.
Yeah, and some coaches are better off when they just go out there and get in field goal range and get the field goal. When you're in field goal range, transition to Ben Johnson and the Bears. You want to talk about someone who went from an offensive coordinator and did not learn about any of the failures that the Detroit Lions had? If you can take one thing from the Detroit Lions, is that Dan Campbell went for it too much and it potentially cost them a trip to the Super Bowl in a year where they're going up against the San Francisco 49ers. And if they had just went for it, kicked the field goal and got for the points, they probably would have won. And then this is apparent on the first drive the Bears had. What do? They're in field goal range. Caleb Williams has an interception in this game. You have another time where you go for it and the Rams come up and stop you again, where instead of driving down the field to tie the game on one of the wildest plays I have seen in the playoffs all year long. I mean, if that doesn't remind you of just Ben Roethlisberger, Patrick Mahomes, Brett Favre, backyard football, where Caleb Williams drops all the way back and then flings it to Cole Kmet wide open in the end zone where he's locked with the corner, just pushes off a little bit and then gets wide open. I was losing my mind in this game, but I'm like, wait a minute. This should have been to win the game, because if you had kicked the 2 field goals, that would have been 6 extra points for you. So if you just went out there, kicked the field goal, they would have won. Like, you can say what you want about Caleb Williams having 3 turnovers in this one. I think the last one in overtime, DJ Moore slowed up and slipped. The weather and the elements were definitely a factor on that one. But, like, say what you will about Caleb Williams, he at least got them into scoring range twice, and his coach was like, no, instead of taking the points, how about you force the ball and then we'll fail twice.
Yeah, they definitely need to take the points, but I want to talk about that play. That play, 4th down in their goal line. It's the red zone. Last play of the game before the Rams potentially win this game. They go all the way back to basically the 50-yard line. He's running back 20, 30 yards. He hucks it to Cole Kmet, and that maybe is that's going to go down as one of the most iconic throws of all time. To me, that throw, I always believed in Caleb Williams. He's going to be a top 5 quarterback someday, but I feel like he needed his moment. That was the moment. He played great last week as well, but that throw, everyone's on watch. You can't look at that throw and go, "Oh, Caleb Williams is an average quarterback." No. That was his moment. Caleb Williams is a dog. Next year, if I'm anybody in the NFC, I'm petrified to face the Bears, because Caleb Williams, there's a lot of improvements that he can go upon. Maybe a little less hero ball, maybe taking the check down more often, completing more of his passes, getting him to like the 65 range. But Caleb Williams in this game, I can look at the turnovers. That last interception, I definitely think is more on DJ Moore not completing his route, but Caleb Williams played incredible in this game. This was a game where if you're not a Caleb Williams supporter, you are after this game. Played out of his mind. Chicago should have won this game. Honestly, even in overtime, they should have won that. That should have been a catch for DJ Moore, but missed opportunities, not kicking the field goal. And LA was just a little bit smarter when it came down to it in the fourth quarter and overtime, making the right plays when it mattered to get the win. But this is the game. This is the Caleb Williams coming out party, and not what you might think when you think of Caleb Williams, but coming out as far as the NFL.
Yeah, I feel like the coming out party for him would be not coming out, and that everyone would be like, "Oh, okay, I didn't expect that." But a lot of people thought the script writers had Bad Bunny doing the Super Bowl halftime, so they made the connection that obviously that means Caleb Williams was going to be in the Super Bowl, right? It seems like they picked probably one of Caleb Williams' favorite artists to play at halftime, and it should have been, I feel like, a Super Bowl between the Bears and the Patriots, and then you have two quarterbacks from that draft going head to head. But yeah, it's another situation where Ben Johnson should have just taken the points, but now you have two iconic throws on fourth down you can point to for Caleb Williams that he's made, where he has the one to Roma Dunze in the Packers game where he has the jump pass to him, and that was on like 4th and 15, and he completed it. And then this game, when we were watching it, my friends, as soon as he saw like people blitzing him, he's like, "Oh, the game's over." And then he just turns around and throws it to Cole Kmet, and then we're like, "Oh my god!" And then we're in an upstairs section of the bar, but we just heard everyone screaming because it was all Bears fans. They're like, "Oh my god, Cole Kmet!" And then you stop the Rams in overtime, and I just don't understand why the Bears went away from the run game. Like, you got the ball in overtime. Why do we need to throw it every single time? Like, I felt like the play calling got a little bit too pass heavy at the end of the game, where you could have fit in some more runs or at least plays to get D Swift in space. Just get some guys in space where we have plenty of time. I don't get why we need to force the ball down the field every single time. And the Bears just got themselves in too many 3rd and 10s at the end of it, especially in overtime. So I thought a lot of this game really just falls at the feet of Ben Johnson, because I think the first turnover is Ben Johnson's fault for not kicking the field goal, especially understanding the environment that this is a snow game and points are going to be hard to come by. I mean, neither team scored until the fourth quarter in this game. And it was in the last 10 minutes of the game where both teams had their touchdown. So, like, just take the points, man. So it's like another game where I felt like he got away with one versus the Packers because of their kicking issues. So I'm like, all right, versus the Rams, though, hopefully he learns from his lesson, and he didn't. The fact that they won the Packers game, Ben Johnson thought he was smarter than he was, and that was my concern with the Bears heading into the playoffs is in the game versus the Commanders last year, Ben Johnson just gets a little bit too cute, and he thinks he's a little bit smarter than he is sometimes. It's like that Christopher Nolan aspect to him where every single plot needs to be in a different time period, and we all need to figure out when it is. Like, okay, sometimes we can just have a linear story.
Yeah. And you look at this game too, like they were good on third down. They had more yards, they had more time of possession. They ran the ball better. They had pretty minimal amount of penalties for the most part. I think their big penalties came in overtime, but they had the ball for 2/3 of the entire game. You look at this game, like if I didn't give you the score, you would say that they won this game, outside of maybe the 3 turnovers to 0 in this scenario. But the biggest thing that calls out is just like what you mentioned with this. The Rams went for it on fourth down once. The Bears went for it on fourth down 6 times. And granted, they converted half of those times, but at the same time, like, field goals, those are important. We need points on the board. You lose by 3, you lost by 3. That's right there. You should have had that there. But the biggest thing that we're robbed from in this game is that if Caleb Williams wins this game, people are putting him in the top 5 conversation after what we saw. We saw that Cole Kmet catch, which was amazing. One of the best plays I've ever seen in the playoffs, to be honest. And it gets robbed because of it. And it's a shame, because this is, to me, the Caleb Williams game. This is the game that if you're not a Caleb Williams fan, you are now after this game. And we were robbed of it, sadly. I would have loved to see him move on, but Rams just played smarter football, all in all. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and I thought the Bears should have won this game, and they played a better game overall. They let some chances slip, and I thought they would win this game, especially just because of all the momentum that they built coming from the Packers game, where they came back 21-3, and the 25-point explosion that they had in the fourth quarter. I thought that was going to propel them to a victory, and it was right there. You stopped the Rams in overtime, and then you could have gotten the ball down the field. And it's like, why do we need to push the ball this far down the field to DJ Moore in a game where he could obviously slip because it's still covered in snow? Like, this is a great time to start running the ball downhill, and I don't understand why they went away from the run game in this one. Like, you still have Kai Manungai, and then when D Swift got in space, he was still doing enough. And then you had Colston Loveland, who is your number one target last game, get injured. So I'm like, this is a good time to just play conservative, get yourself in positive yardage situations. But it's just Ben Johnson felt himself a little bit too much again. And then he's done it with the Lions, and that was kind of his kryptonite. And then did it as well in this game where Sean McVay just played the long game and ended up winning, where it really didn't seem like the Rams should have won this game. And I think the Bears outplayed them.
Yeah, they definitely outplayed them. Their run game was great. I mean, they rushed for a $160 in this game. We had D Swift had a huge game, a lot of big runs in this game. Kyle Manungai, he was playing well. All in all, we had some big games. Roma Dunze made some big catches here. Cole Kmet obviously with that big catch too, but it's just a shame. Again, we get robbed from Caleb Williams, and then Ben Johnson. He has a little. It seems to me that he has a bit of an ego when it comes to his play calling when it matters, and that could be ultimately. If the Bears never win the Super Bowl, it could be because of that very reason.
Yeah, and it doesn't come across the same way it did with like the Andy Reid and Kyle Shanahan meltdowns, where it didn't seem like ego necessarily, but it does just seem like a different temperament with Ben Johnson, where it is like strictly ego why the Bears failed in this game. Where like Kyle Shanahan melts down, Andy Reid melts down, like they just go away from the run game, and that's kind of the common theme in this one. But like Ben Johnson's just arrogant.
Yeah. It's not the same. Kyle Shanahan, I feel like he plays too conservatively in those games, like what we saw in the Falcons 28-3 game. They play a little too conservatively. They try to pass when they shouldn't be, and that's what cost them. Here, like, it's just the arrogance of we're in field goal range, we're not kicking field goals. Why? This is a playoff game where points are at a premium. I mean, you're held to 17 points even after that amazing Caleb Williams play. Like, kick the field goals when it matters, and this game would be totally different.
Yeah, especially to start the game too. I get you want to snatch all the momentum, but what is more of a buzzkill than having it and then going for it on 4th and 3? Caleb Williams turns it over, and then the Rams turn right around and drive the ball down the field again.
Yeah, I will say the only time I think they should have gone for two was when they scored that touchdown. They just snatched all the momentum. Chicago was roaring. I would have loved to be in attendance at Soldier Field that game. Maybe go for two then. If there's any time to go for two, maybe then. But even then, like, just you had your opportunities in overtime and you blew it. And the Rams deserved to win for that reason.
Yeah, especially like it was a snow game, and then we looked up the temperature during that game, and it was like 18 degrees, but feels like 5 in that one. So we're trying to push the ball down the field when it's slick. Where I feel like you could have done some plays where we're trying to use Caleb Williams' legs a little bit more, because they also went away from that in the fourth quarter, where I feel like if you're going to get the ball back in overtime, this is when we try and run the ball. If the Rams are going to get the ball back, make sure they don't get another opportunity, and use Caleb Williams' legs, because he's had success in the playoffs picking up first downs every time. So just felt like a wasted opportunity for the Bears. And you're in a tough division in the NFC North, so you're not guaranteed that you're going to get back here. We've seen quarterbacks have great playoff runs, have a great divisional round, and then not get back eventually. So we'll see if DJ Moore is there next year. It'll really depend on your draft, but like you're not guaranteed an opportunity to come back. And it's like what Dan Campbell said after they lost to the 49ers, like this may have been our only chance to get to the Super Bowl. So you can't take those chances for granted.
Yeah, not at all. Especially with all the teams in that division and how good they are, with how good the Giants may be next year with Jim Harbaugh or John Harbaugh. Like, we literally saw this last year with Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels and how great they were last year, running the football, making it to the conference championship. How bad were they this year? They were banged up because of injuries. They had a harder schedule. So it's very possible that could happen with Chicago. I don't think it's going to happen with Chicago. I think their defense played really well. Jaquan Brisker played a great game. And I definitely think that there's a lot of momentum for them next year, but it's not guaranteed. They're going to have a really tough schedule ahead of them. And
Yeah,
the
you have
NFC's a
a first
gauntlet,
place
too.
schedule, and then you're gonna have the Lions coming back. We'll see if they can fix it. But the Lions were the worst team in your division this year, and guess what? They beat you twice. So they got a little bit of beef with you and extra motivation to beat you because you're their offensive coordinator who left and went there. And then the Packers are going to be healthier next year. They'll be refined. And then J.J. McCarthy looked really good at the end of the season. And you're going to have a first place schedule, too. And I get Ben Johnson's arrogance helps for a franchise that is as sorry as the Bears and hasn't had a lot of success recently. So I feel like a part of that is a strength in how he was able to turn around the Bears, give Caleb Williams some confidence this season. But on the other side of it, it does eventually come around to bite you in the ass sometimes. And you're in a tough division, so like you're definitely not guaranteed to get back there. I think you will, but it's one of those situations where when you have an opportunity, you can't let those slip through your fingers, especially when you outplay the opposing team.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say is like Caleb Williams next season, if he can limit the turnovers and he can complete maybe 65% of his passes, Caleb Williams might be the MVP next year. Very well. They got a bunch of weapons. Their running game's really great. They have the coach. They have the defense. Like, I think we could be looking at Caleb Williams winning the MVP next year if he can take that next step. Because I think he's absolutely that throw that he made to Cole Kmet. There's only one other guy in the league that I think can make that pass, and it's Patrick Mahomes. That play that we had to Roma Dunze last week, that's a Patrick Mahomes play. So like he's the talent. He's the second most talented quarterback in the league. I think we could see him win the MVP next year,
Yeah,
100%.
no, he has the talent to be MVP. I think he could be there. Right now, I'm leaning Tyler Shuck as my MVP this year because I don't think anyone are gonna see the Saints coming. But yeah, he's definitely one of those guys. He's going to be in the conversation with him, Drake May, and then you have like your typical people, and then we'll see if anyone comes out of the draft and is in the MVP conversation. But he definitely has the talent to do it. But I think if that was Patrick Mahomes, that's kind of what separates him and Mahomes. I think Mahomes definitely would have pulled that game out. So
Yes.
I think this game does solidify to me, well, Caleb Williams is talented enough to be a top five quarterback. He's not the best quarterback, and he doesn't have that same gene that Patrick Mahomes has.
But maybe he gets it. Maybe next year he takes that step forward. It can happen. Sometimes it takes a while for people to start winning, but Caleb Williams, he's definitely got the pedigree to do so. I think he's got the clutch factor. He's got the talent for sure. It's just can it all piece together into a Super Bowl is the question because Chicago's starving for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, they're starving to get back to the conference championship game, and will definitely be a good chance next year. And yeah, definitely a good season for Chicago. Have a lot to hang your hat on, be proud about for the Bears. And a lot of people didn't necessarily think that they were going to be there either. A lot of people thought they had the potential, but they actually went out there this year and did it. I kind of was a see it to believe it person. Now, next year, I definitely have expectations for this team, and now they also have expectations on them. So they'll have a first place schedule. They have to go out there and meet it. So that'll definitely be interesting. And then that's all the games. Do you want to do an intermission and go over the coaching hires that we had? Also, Atlanta's new president of operations, Matt Ryan, being hired.
Yeah, let's do it. I think some of these hires I might have missed, so let's go over it.
Yeah, so now Matt Ryan is going to be the one calling a lot of the shots for the Atlanta Falcons, and his first decision was hiring Kevin Stefanski as head coach for the Atlanta Falcons. And we had both said that Kevin Stefanski makes a lot of sense going to Atlanta. My biggest concern with him going to Atlanta was, is this going to be the same situation as Cleveland, where in Cleveland, what was the issue with Stefanski is he wasn't able to get the quarterback position right, where you had Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield had a really good rookie season. You beat the Steelers in the playoffs and you knocked them out. That was your first playoff win in a very long time. I think it was like since the 80s. And then so you set a record there. He's a two-time coach of the year, but you have the Deshaun Watson debacle, and then how he handled the whole Shador Sanders situation wasn't ideal either. So I'm like, do you really want to go to Atlanta with a quarterback in Michael Penix who hasn't really lived up to expectations. He's been very inconsistent. The offense really hasn't been there, and you might have to potentially look for a quarterback in the draft. So I was a little bit nervous about him going to Atlanta for those reasons, but he ends up doing it. And I still have some of the same concerns where I think he'll be able to unlock Bijan Robinson to his full potential. Same with Drake London. I think he has better wide receivers than he ever did in Cleveland, but is he going to be able to unlock the quarterback position? Because I don't think Michael Penix is the answer, and I think he's going to have to probably go out there, either trade for someone or draft a quarterback this year, and he wasn't able to do it in Cleveland.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a lot of patience with them. Michael Penix, I don't believe in. I think you should start looking for a quarterback this offseason for him, especially as he comes off injuries. But if I'm Matt Ryan, I think, by the way, Matt Ryan being hired is a great fit for them. I think he's going to be great for them. He does fit the front office type, so I think he'll be great there. But getting Kevin Stefanski, I think he was the best coach available, so that's a home run pick. Who's going to be the coordinators that he surrounds himself with? Because I think he's going to want to get a good DC. Maybe Robert Saleh, he can pluck from the 49ers if he doesn't get a head coaching job, which I think he should. And then from there, like everything you said, like Bijan, I think he's going to be unlocked. I think Kyle Pitts will be unlocked. I think Drake London will be unlocked. But if I'm them, like give a call to the Cardinals. See if they're willing to part with Kyler, eat some of the contract. Maybe there's some other free agents available that are interesting. I know we talked about Mac Jones potentially going there, but I would say draft a quarterback and then trade for somebody as a bridge because I just don't think Michael Penix is that guy. But if they can get the quarterback in Atlanta, they're going to win the next three divisions easily, unless if the Saints are as good as we think they may be. But with the Bucks falling apart, with the Panthers being inconsistent, with the Saints in rebuild, you have a chance to win several division titles in a row if you play your cards right. So for them, I think there's a lot of opportunity for Kevin Stefanski, who I do think is a good head coach.
Yeah, and I know he'll get the defensive coordinator right because he had the wherewithal to bring in Jim Schwartz, who is a head coach for the Detroit Lions for a long time. So he has a lot of experience there, and he was his defensive coordinator in Cleveland. So I have no doubt that he'll be able to fix the defense. And at one point, the Atlanta Falcons had the best pass defense, and they have a lot of talent on defense. Really, the thing that they got to figure out is the pass rush, which they can definitely address in the draft. So I think for Atlanta, it's just going to all come down to the quarterback position. But the fact that Matt Ryan is going to be the president of operations there is definitely a huge plus, especially for finding a quarterback. He did say in his press conference though that he will not pull a Phillip Rivers and he's not looking to come back and play football for the Falcons.
That's such a shame. That'd be hilarious. Imagine Michael Penix gets hurt again and it comes down to like win or end scenario in week 18, you know he's going to want to play. Yeah. And how cool would it be if Matt Ryan just came out of retirement for that one game? That'd be cool.
He's going full Bill Russell. I'm going to be the first team president that also plays.
That'd be sick. But I love, honestly, though, I do love those hires. I think Matt Ryan's a great fit for them. He fits the Falcons' identity. And then you get Kevin Stefanski. So I'm a big fan of that. I think their roster is really solid. You do have A.J. Terrell, who's a beast corner. You have some nice pieces on that defense. Jesse Bates has played well for you. It's just ultimately that pass rush. Really, if you can get a good edge rusher in the draft, which you're picking fairly high, so I think you should be able to, then I think they should be good. They just need to get pressure on the quarterback, and that's been their biggest issue on defense the last several years.
Yeah, and the biggest thing will be quarterback. So it'll be, do you go out there and trade for Mac Jones? Because Mac Jones did play really well for the 49ers with much worse weapons. So I think you definitely could make it work with someone like Mac Jones, but it's going to be, you need someone who's going to be that franchise guy for Atlanta. And I don't think Michael Penix is really the guy. I think he's closer to more someone like Tua, where maybe he could potentially win a playoff game if every circumstance goes the right way, but I don't think he would get past the divisional round. with Michael Penix, and then Mac Jones, kind of same thing. I think it'd be like a Sam Darnold situation where you have to have a absolute juggernaut like the Seattle Seahawks have, where you have potentially the best defense in the league. You have an all-pro returner in Rashid Shaheed who can break the game open, and then Kenneth Walker going off for a historic generational game as well. So
Yeah, there's a lot of things they're going to need. But at least Bijan, I think Bijan is a top 5 running back. He should be good for them. Drake London hasn't fully been unlocked yet in Atlanta. This season, I think he started to move forward there, but didn't have his 1,000-yard season. He's had 1,000-yard season in his 4 years. I think he's definitely due. Injuries have played a part for him, but I think they're close. I think they're really close to competing in that division. It's just this offseason is going to be the biggest thing for them. Get pressure, maybe draft another wide receiver to pair along Drake London, and then this team I think could win 10 or 11 games next year.
yeah, but definitely interesting to see Kevin Stefanski go the Falcons. Biggest question mark will be the quarterback situation. What will they do there? But that was a big pickup, especially hiring Matt Ryan now as the team president. Definitely excited to see how he does there, but I can definitely see him being a excellent person in that role. So credit to the Falcons. And then the other head coaching hire was John Harbaugh, who is now kicking himself because the Bills role is open. But he gets hired with the Giants, 5 years, $100 million. I believe is what they gave him, and now he's going to be coaching Jackson Dart and Malik Neighbors, Cam Scatabo, that young team there. What were your overall thoughts when you heard John Harbaugh is going to the Giants?
I think we're going to see something maybe not quite like what we saw with the Patriots, but it seems similar. I think we're going to see a potential worst to first scenario with them where they have a really good defense. It's just been overshadowed by a poor offense. If you can keep Jackson Dart out of the medical tent next year, Cam Scatabo recovers from his injury effectively. You have good receivers. You have good running backs in Cam Scatabo. Jackson Dart had showed some flashes this year. So ultimately, I think this team is definitely a playoff team next year. I think they go 10-7 or 11-6, and come back from the ashes. I think John Harbaugh's a great hire for them, and you've seen plenty of times where they go and spend that money on a head coach, it being effective. Patriots this past year, we've seen what the Chiefs did with Andy Reid his first year. John Harbaugh, I don't think is in the same echelons as them, but I think that he can easily turn this Giants team around. Just as simple as a good offseason for them. Go out and get a receiver. Maybe you draft a tight end. Theo Johnson was good for you, but you have Bobby Okereke on there. You have Brian Burns, Abdul Carter. You have a lot of things to like about that defense for them. So I think they're going to step in next year, and I think the Giants make the playoffs because of it.
Man, it'll be interesting because he has proven he can coach a good defense. He's a special teams guy, so he's a very well-rounded head coach. And I feel like the most interesting stat is he was with his team for 18 years in Baltimore, and without Lamar Jackson, he's 8-4 in the playoffs. With Lamar Jackson, he's 3-6 in the playoffs.
That's jarring. That's
So
weird.
two of those losses coming to Josh Allen, two of those losses coming to Patrick Mahomes, and then the other one I believe was when they lost to the Chargers, and then they lost to the Bengals, but Lamar didn't play in that game. So overall, in the Lamar era, he is 3-6. They beat the Texans one year, and then they had the bye. And then I can't remember off the top of my head the other teams that they beat, but like it's like a clear difference. So do you think that is a issue just with him and Lamar and just the communication there and how they were running the offense, or do you think that might tie into a little bit of Lamar Jackson or John Harbaugh potentially being an outdated head coach? Because we've seen head coaches before stay with the same team for 18 years and then have a little bit of trouble moving on. But we've also seen head coaches like Andy Reid struggle in Philadelphia, but have a lot of success still. And then when they go to another team, they end up picking up where they left off, and they're almost rejuvenated by it. So I think the new environment could help him, but I'm a little bit concerned that he might just be a little bit outdated as far as a head coach, because I think he's like a really solid and a really good head coach, but for the modern NFL, I just don't know if he's going to be the right guy for a young team like this or necessarily connect with kind of the aura that is Cam Scatterbo and Jackson Dart.
Yeah, that is a question I have as well, because these guys, I think they could have benefited from. I mean, he's an older head coach. He's 62. He's been in the league as a Super Bowl champion. I think I don't know exactly who would have been the right fit there for them, but I think that he might have the ability to calm down the Jackson Darts of the world, making him a little less aggressive as his play call. Cam Scatterbo, I think that's going to be a good fit for them. But I think part of that indictment is on Lamar, because in a lot of those games, it's been Lamar playing poorly and their offense just kind of sputtering. I don't know if it all lays on John Harbaugh. I do think that maybe he performs better with someone that is more of a pocket passer like Joe Flacco. But I think he's going to prove to us. I think he's going to be a good head coach for them. I think they could win a playoff game. I'm more of a believer in the John Harbaugh New York experience. I think he is going to get them going, especially with the Cowboys in somewhat of a rebuild. We have the Commanders. What will they be next year? We don't know. And the Eagles, there seems to be some chemistry issues. So I think if nothing else, they should win 10 games. They should be effective. And they've given him a long leash, so they have time for him to develop that team. And that team, I think, honestly, you have some of those losses turn to wins. You have a couple of blown leads. If they can prevent that next year, then I think they're going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'd say the positive with John Harbaugh is he is one of the winningest head coaches of all time. When he did win his Super Bowl, you had potentially one of the best defenses of the decade with the Ravens when they went and they beat the San Francisco 49ers in 2012 when you had Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Terrell Suggs there. So you really had them as the leaders of the team. And then Joe Flacco going berserk. So you have someone who's had playoff success. But on the flip side, when it comes to him calming down Jackson Dart, has he been able to stop Lamar Jackson and coach him out of getting injured? No. Has he
No.
been able to stick to what made the Ravens great in the regular season and not let them get away from that in the playoffs? No, because you have games where he would just simply go away from Derrick Henry and stop giving Derrick Henry the ball when Derrick Henry was having some of the best games of his career this season. And then you had some of those conference championships games versus the Chiefs where you would just go away from the run game and then completely go away from your identity and start passing it. So it's like, well, he's a guy who's going to be really good for your team in the regular season, but I don't necessarily know if he's going to help Jackson Dart stay healthy because he couldn't keep Lamar Jackson out of harm's way and help him calm down and stay calm in the pocket. And then he did lead Lamar Jackson to 2 MVP seasons, but on the flip side, he let him kind of get away from what made him great when it got to the playoffs. So I don't know if that's just Lamar panicking, but it is a little bit. You have some of the games this season where they went away from the run game and they just stopped giving Derrick Henry the ball.
Yeah, those are fair criticisms. Another thing is like the Giants this year had 5 fourth quarter blown leads, and John Harbaugh has been a guy that has blown several leads. He has the most second half blown leads in NFL history. But that being said, I still believe in them. I think they're going to definitely they really can't get any worse. So I think they are going to be better. I think he can easily double their win total, maybe triple potentially. But those concerns are valid. I mean, with everything that you mentioned, plus with the blown leads, I think he's going to be successful in the sense that they're going to have stability. I think they will be a consistent playoff threat. It's just, are they going to win the Super Bowl with John Harbaugh? Right now, we got to see how they develop that team because their defense is close, their offense is close, but they might need to draft another receiver. They might need to bolster that offensive line, which is always perpetually bad for them. So there's a lot of things that play a part in his success in New York.
Yeah, and then can you hear me right now? It's saying my internet's trying to connect.
I hear you.
All right, word. But yeah, I think those are the two only coaches being hired right now. And then we have like Tennessee. Looks like they're targeting Robert Saleh. So
Love
that
that.
should be interesting there. And then I saw the Rams defensive coordinator is linked to the Pittsburgh Steelers as well. He's the relative of Don Shula, who had a lot of success. So he's kind of linked to the Pittsburgh Steelers, because he's a young coach, and one thing about the Steelers is they definitely want someone who's going to be there a very long time for them. I know some people said like, "Oh, Sean McDermott's going to be the guy." I'm like, definitely not.
No,
They're
I
not
think
going to hire Sean McDermott.
no. I did see that the Dolphins hired Jeff Hafley from the Packers, who's been their DC the last 2 years. Um, Young guy. He had coached the Packers. He was a coach at BC before. Has some experience. He was under the Kyle Shanahan tree in Carolina, in San Francisco. He's been to Ohio State. So he has experience. He goes far back. He's only 46 years old, but hasn't really done too much in the NFL. The DC for the Packers these past 2 years has resulted in them being fifth and 13th with some injuries this year for them. But Jeff Hafley is the coach of the Dolphins. How do you feel about that? I personally don't know if I love that hire at all.
Did you just blow a 21-3 lead?
Yes.
Like,
And the
I
Dolphins
feel
are
like
like
the Packers
Dolphins are like
defense was the issue.
yeah, and Dolphins are like that's our guy. That's the guy they're going to hire, which I don't love that at all. But I mean, defensive wise, like how easy is it to be a defensive coordinator if you have Micah Parsons on your team? I feel like it makes your job a lot easier. And your defense last year was like decent, but it wasn't amazing. I just don't know if that's the guy that Miami should be targeting when I feel like for them they should have somebody who's much more established. He's been a head coach. He coached at BC. I could pull up his college stats, but I just don't know if a guy who coached at BC in college is going to be that excellent. And he's had some experience. He's had, he's been able to be under Kyle Shanahan a little bit. He had Matt LaFleur experience here as well. But I don't know. You're Miami. You have enough talent that you guys should be competitive. But instead of going after somebody who's established, maybe like a Sean McDermott even would have been fine. Instead, you go after a guy who has a little bit of head coaching experience with BC, but college and NFL are two very different things.
Yeah, this seems kind of like a poverty move for the Miami Dolphins. I mean, when I hear Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator, it doesn't necessarily give me a lot of confidence because you just had that meltdown versus the Bears, and their defense has been good this year, but I've never been like, wow, the Packers defense is top five in the NFL or amazing, or I've never been, wow, their scheme is really good, especially when all you had to do was get a stop versus the Bears in the fourth quarter, or I don't know, not let them drop 25 points against you in the fourth quarter, and he would have been fine. And the fact that Miami takes a look at him, they're like, that's our guy. I think he's going to be the coach of the future that's going to lead us down. Like, this seems like what is going to happen with the Jets, where as soon as they let Robert Saleh go, you saw how much he was kind of holding their franchise together, even though they weren't the best team in the league. It's the best that the Jets have had. And you want to take a look at the Miami Dolphins history as far as coaches before Mike McDaniels got there. I mean, there wasn't an expectation for Miami to get to the playoffs until Mike McDaniel was their head coach. I'm not even a Mike McDaniel fan. I think he's actually a fine NFL head coach, and he had some really solid years, especially with how good he made Tua look. But this kind of feels like going from Robert Saleh to Aaron Glenn, and then Mike McDaniels to Jeff Hafley. And like, I don't
What if
know.
I what if I told you that his coaching record at BC was 22 and 26? Made two bowl games, which I know BC is not perennially great, but that being said, like this just feels like a reach. Feels like they're trying too hard for something that I just don't think is going to pan out for them. This team hasn't won a playoff game since the 2000s, and you've had, a failed experience with Nick Saban. You've had failed experiences with Tony Sperano. You've had, you've had Adam Gase in there. Like, just get somebody who's established. It just hasn't been successful for you. Go out and get somebody that's legitimate for you, and maybe there'll be some success. But this just feels like it's going to be a guy that's fired after 1 year, maybe
Yeah,
two.
I'd rather hire Bill O'Brien than that guy at this point. Like,
Yeah, I just don't think that's a great hire at all. I think it's going to
either that
blow up
or
in their face.
Ben Burke for the Houston Texans, their defensive coordinator. Like, essentially, you're only hiring Jeff Hafley for his network because, oh, he had a cup of coffee with Kyle Shanahan. It's the whole, oh, you had a cup of coffee with Sean McVay. Of course you can be a head coach because now he's going to have that network of people that he can hire as far as coordinators.
Yeah, I don't love it at all. This team is desperate for success. They need it. And the only times that they've really hired somebody that has been legitimate, like has experience, has been when they hired Jimmy Johnson back in the 90s. And they had success with him. They made 3 playoff appearances with him. But ever since then, they've been going after these either college head coaches or guys who've had very little experience there. And it hasn't boded well for them. So I just think maybe just go somebody that is established. Target somebody like a Sean McDermott. Maybe they would have been successful there, but this is a reach and a half.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it doesn't seem like there's a ton of other great options. And then every team kind of just has to wait around for whether it's Clint Kubiak or Shula for the Rams defensive coordinator to get hired. So now you're kind of just playing the waiting game here.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes for them. But given their disaster, who's going to be the quarterback next year? Their defense fell apart. Like, really, the only thing they got going for them is potentially Devon Achane because they're probably going to move off of Tyreek Hill. So you're going to just have Devon Achane and nobody else basically on that offense.
Yeah, it'll be tough. And Tyreek Hill, yeah, again, he'll probably get traded. Maybe Buffalo takes him on if they can afford it, but probably not because they're in cap hell. But that will be interesting. But that's the head coaches so far. We'll definitely keep an eye on that. But on Sunday, we have the conference championship. It's kind of a big deal because it is 1 week before the Pro Bowl. I know everyone's excited to see your favorite players play flag football and capture the flag or whatever other games they added here. But the NFC went first last year, and now the AFC goes first this year. And boy, is this a big game because we have the New England Patriots heading to their house of horrors, going to Denver, where they have not won in the playoffs. This is a place where they are 0-7 in their history, and they are playing their former quarterback, Jarrett Stidham, who was there through the Cam Newton era. It is Josh McDaniels' former quarterback when he was with the Raiders, and Josh McDaniels saw him have a 400-yard passing game versus the Kansas City Chiefs. So Josh McDaniels coached with him in New England, coached with him in the Raiders, and now he kind of knows this player inside and out. And the Broncos had Pat Bryant go down, so he's going to be banged up in this game, and he's been one of their better receivers. Cortland Sutton didn't have his best game, and now Marvin Mims is kind of your go-to guy, and you're probably going to be putting Christian Gonzalez on Mims in this one, and probably I would put Carlton Davis on Evan Ingram, put him on tight end, like when we used to put Aqib Talib on Travis Kelce or have him on the best tight end there. But heading into Denver with Jarrett Stidham, I feel like a lot of people are just saying the Patriots are going to walk in there and win. But with the fact that we have the history of them not winning there before, and then Jarrett Stidham, who I don't think is necessarily a bad quarterback, and Nick Foles posted on his Twitter, he said, don't count out Jarrett Stidham because the Patriots do not have a good history in championship-type games against backup quarterbacks.
Yeah, I see right now it started off at 5.5 points. It's moved down for the Patriots at 4.5 now. Or actually, conversely, the spread has continued to go in the Patriots' favor, meaning that people are betting the house that the Patriots blow them out. And I think we should also just shout out the Denver's defense. The defense that's been top 5 in the league this year. The Patriots, if they win this game, will be the first team in playoff history to have 1, 2, 3 top 5 defenses they have to go through to make the Super Bowl. So I think that's something. Denver's defense, if Drake May is going to keep fumbling, I think this game is going to be a lot closer than we think. I still think the Patriots pull off the win, but I still think that this game, for me, Jarrett Stidham by no means I think is a slouch. I don't think he's a starter in the NFL, but I think he's a guy that can step in and make big throws when it matters. We're going to see Cortland Sutton have a big game, I think, but this feels to me like a game that everyone's going to be banking on the Patriots to win this game, and I do think they still win this game, but I like the Broncos at plus 5.5. I do think this is going to come down to a field goal, and it's going to be a lot closer and low scoring than we think it will be.
Yeah, and I think game is going to be a dogfight for a couple reasons. I think Denver's defense will be able to keep them in it, and we've seen Drake May have some fumbling issues, and I think that'll continue in this game, especially with Nick Benito. But I don't think Denver's defense is as nearly as good as Houston's. But the great equalizer is that you're going on the road to Denver. So I think that kind of washes it out where this game is going to be as challenging, if not more. Mike Vrabel also said they're not going to fly in until Saturday, which I don't like because it takes about 24 to 48 hours to get acclimated to the altitude. So ideally, you'd probably want to get there by Thursday just so you're used to it. But you have some of the altitude chambers that you can train with there. I think the real thing again in this game, though, is going to be the Patriots are trying to overcome history with having never won a playoff game in Denver. And then the defense of the Patriots going up against Jarrett Stidham, who they were able to confuse Justin Herbert, where they didn't know what they were doing on offense. They made C.J. Stroud look terrible, and Josh McDaniels has coached Jarrett Stidham in New England. He's coached him with the Raiders, so he's going to know him inside and out. He knows all of his weaknesses. He knows everything he can point out, and I think New England's defense got better from week one all the way until this week, from wild card weekend into the divisional round. And I think just their scheme being able to confuse the Broncos is going to help them. And then the thing that people aren't talking about is New England's undefeated on the road this year. So this is kind of the moment they live for. As good as they've been at home in these playoff games, Drake May is kind of one of those players that elevates his game on the road. Mike Vrabel likes to go into the imposing environment, kind of snatch the heart of the other team. I think Denver's defense is going to give them trouble, but I think Denver's definitely going to have a tougher time scoring because New England's defense, I think at this point, they're just flat out healthier than Buffalo, and they might be the best unit left in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the Patriots defense is going to be what wins this game. I think Denver, they did a decent job of containing James Cook for the most part in the Buffalo game. I think it's going to be the same here in Buffalo and for the Patriots. I can see Travion Henderson having a rough game, Ramondre Stevenson. But ultimately, with Drake May, he's made big throws when it matters. He's converting on third down. He's using his legs. He's healthy. Patriots have the best health of any of the remaining teams. And Denver just being shorthanded. If Bo Nix was in this game, I think it'd be a lot closer. I think Bo Nix has proven to be a playoff performer after last week, so that's a big blow for them. But Patriots, the fact that they know Jarrett Stidham, the fact that their defense is one of the best remaining defenses, it's going to come down to that defense and how they play. And I think they're going to finally overcome some demons, beating them on the road in Denver in the Mile High, overcoming that obstacle that they had in the Brady era.
Yeah, and don't forget, Sean Payton has had some historic choke jobs in the conference championship as well. And then I don't think the NFL wants to see Jarrett Stidham move on. I know a lot of people are talking about we have Drake May versus Jarrett Stidham. This game's definitely not going to feed families, but don't forget we had a game where it was Case Keenum versus Nick Foles. As far as the conference championship game, and then we had that Saxonville game where it was Blake Bortles and Tom Brady, and I think it was the same year where we literally had Blake Bortles, Nick Foles, and Case Keenum all in the conference championship at the same time. So as far as the NFL standard, it can get a lot worse than this, but I do think it's going to be Denver's defense that keeps them in this game. But I think where you're going to be concerned is the Bills were able to get home on Bo Nix and force him into that interception when they blitzed him every single time. And it seemed like in the second half, that's really where Buffalo thrived. Where in this game, the thing with Bo Nix is he can move, and he was actually very mobile in that game, and that was what was keeping them alive versus Buffalo, keeping the drives alive. Jarrett Stidham can't do that. So the fact that Jarrett Stidham's going to have to pretty much sit in the pocket in this game, take shots from Milton Williams, take shots from Christian Barmore, and then you're going to be able to have Mike Vrabel scheme a game where he'll have someone in Jarrett Stidham who's been coached by Josh McDaniels, who knows him inside and out. I feel like that gives the Patriots a huge advantage in this game. And I just think that is going to be the matchup again that will win them the game. I think Denver will do fine against the Patriots offense. It's just going to be, I don't believe in their offense versus New England's defense, especially New England being undefeated on the road this year. I think that's the most important stat heading into this game.
Yeah, and they've held the Chargers and Texans to a combined 19 points through the first two games. They've only given up a touchdown to Charlie Kirk at this point. So it's
Charlie Kirk.
they've only given up one touchdown through two games. Jared Stidham, I mean, you have Christian Gonzalez on Cortland Sutton. He's going to be fighting demons there. And then after that, like Evan Ingram, he hasn't really been excellent for them this season either. So I just don't think there's a lot of things that are positives for Denver offensively that's going to help them. So Patriots schematically, they've been there before. I know this is a newer regime, but they've been there. All the coaches have been there. I think this is just an obvious pick. I think Patriots definitely win, but I do think Denver covers there.
Score with this one, I would probably go like, I'm thinking a weird score like a 19 to 13 in this one.
Yeah, I think yeah, 19 to 13 sounds good. Maybe it's like 17 to 12. That could be another weird game that would cover in that
Yeah.
scenario. So yeah, I think I'll take like 17 to 12. Maybe they kick some field goals, but it's going to be Denver's offense this is going to be a true test for them if they want to move on. But just like with the NFL, like I don't think they want Jared Stidham in the Super Bowl. They want Drake May, and I think whoever ends up coming out of the NFC, we're gonna have a good game. But if Denver makes it out, like that's just not going to be good for ratings for the NFL, and the ratings is what matters in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, especially if we have like Drake May in the Super Bowl his first time versus the Rams. I feel like that is probably your best matchup left. And then Seattle, just the absolute juggernaut of a team in all three phases of the game. We have Rashid Shaheed. You have that defensive unit who has been electric for them. Then you also have their offense with Kenneth Gainwell, the best wide receiver, arguably in the league in Jackson Smith and Jigba and Puka Nacua, who are going to be battling it out in a trilogy. And this is what we predicted heading into the playoffs before we made any of our week-to-week picks. We said NFL probably wants a trilogy because the Thursday night game where it was Seattle versus the Rams was probably one of the best games all season. Definitely as far as top five. You had that ridiculous 2-point conversion that they had where Sam Darnold like threw it in the air. It was a backwards pass, and then they picked it up in the end zone. And that is essentially what goes on to decide that game. The first game, Sam Darnold throws 4 interceptions, but it's still a one-possession game here. And then you had Puka Nacua in the second game come off the Aiden Ross controversy where he was making the little money hand symbol, and then they ended up fining him for that. But then he goes for 225 yards against one of the better defenses in the NFL. So all of the drama is there. You have Mike McDaniel, who's a second-year head coach. Clint Kubiak, who's probably thinking of head coaching opportunities right now, so maybe he's a little bit distracted, same way Ben Johnson was last year when they faced off against the Commanders. But overall, I feel like this is going to be a great matchup and probably one of the best matchups we've had so far in the playoffs.
Yeah, for me, where it points to for me is Sam Darnold is banged up with the oblique. You didn't really have him push the ball much this past game. He didn't really need to because they already had a 17-point lead when he even needed to throw any passes. So I don't think it's going to be the same script this game. The Rams have been a little bit lesser on the road. However, if I'm the NFL and I want the best headline for the Super Bowl, you have the battle of the two MVP candidates. I feel like that's what the NFL is going to be pushing for. So I do think the Rams are going to prevail in this game, in the trilogy. It is going to be a dogfight. It is going to come down to the last few minutes. Sean McVay has more experience than Mike McDaniels, or Mike McDonald, I mean. So I'm going to take the Rams to win this game, but I do think this is going to come down to fourth quarter, potentially overtime. I think the game's similar to Chicago. I think it's going to be like 23-20 potentially, but I like the Rams. They have the experience. They have Matt Stafford, who has a full bill of health. So give me the Rams here.
Yeah, I think the toughest thing for Seattle is you essentially got 2 buys where you had a week of rest, and then you get a tune-up game against the 49ers where Christian McCaffrey goes down. This is a team that was dragging their feet to the finish line. You had Tom Brady say that their team bus might as well be an ambulance at this point, and it's pretty hard to disagree with him, with all the injuries that the 49ers had. They also had Brandon Ayuk quit on the team essentially this year and not want to come back from his injury. And then you have Seattle, who just blows them out in this game. You start out pretty much everything that could possibly go right for you does go right, and you don't have Sam Darnold really have to make a play in this game. Where now, when you go up against the Rams, you had the Bears pretty much outplay you, leave some points on the board, and then you had a game versus the Panthers where it seemed like the Panthers let one slip out of their hands, and they made a lot of mistakes in the first half as well. And now you kind of just end up in the conference championship game. You have back-to-back games where Matthew Stafford leads a game-winning drive for a score in overtime, and the touchdown to Colby Parkinson in this one. So in this one, I have to go right there with you. I have to go with experience because I think the Rams are going to force Sam Darnold to have a game-winning drive in this one. I don't think Seattle's going to be able to just come out there, dominate the Rams, get a kick return on the first play for a touchdown, and then have Kenneth Walker have the game of his life again. I think the Rams are going to dare Sam Darnold to push the ball down the field and then see if he can do it because he was injured. And then the 49ers had a couple times where it seemed like they could have made it a game in the first half, and they had some solid stops against the Rams on third down where their defense was able to force a turnover on downs or force the Seattle Seahawks to punt here. So I do think the Rams are going to just put a lot more pressure on Seattle just because you have arguably the best receiver in the league, and you also have Devontae Adams, who might be the best number 2 receiver in the league at this point, and then Sean McVay, who has that experience here, where I think it's just one of those scenarios where it's a young team who has all the kind of pieces going right for them, but is Sam Darnold, who is potentially going to have an end-of-game drive, going to be able to do it against the Rams. And I think the Rams honestly probably should have beat them the last time they played them on Thursday Night Football, and I think they want that get back in this one. And they've been preparing for this.
They've absolutely been preparing for this. Also, as far as like the worst defensive game that the Seahawks have had all season, it was against the Rams, that game. A game that I also agree the Rams should have won, especially with that 2-point conversion call. But nonetheless, like we saw last time they played, Puka Nacua had a monster game. Kyron Williams did a decent job in that game. Matt Stafford threw for 450, and they didn't get a single sack on him. So you play all of that into it. I think the Rams are their biggest test defensively all season because, like, Puka Nacua was in that game, but we didn't even have Devontae Adams in that game. If he's there, do they win that game potentially? We don't know, but as far as like the biggest test for the Seahawks defense, the Rams, that's a team that's tough to game plan for, whether it's Devontae or Puka. Kyron Williams is no slouch either. Colby Parkinson makes big plays when it matters, so I think it's going to be a big test for them. I think they are up for the task, but like you mentioned, like when it comes down to Sam Darnold having the ball with his hands to win the game, I don't think I have the trust that I should have, where with Drake May, with Matt Stafford, those guys I trust a little bit more. Sam Darnold hasn't proven that he's that guy for them. So for that alone, I think it's the Rams to win.
Yeah, especially when you have that much go right in a game. Like, does that happen in back-to-back playoff games?
No, it doesn't. Because, like, the last time the Seahawks had that big run, they had battles throughout the entire postseason. We had that Packers game where you got lucky with the Brian Bostic fumble to make the Super Bowl. And then, obviously, that Super Bowl against the Broncos, everything goes right for them. Patriots game, it's a battle there. So I just don't know if they're going to get that break again with the Rams. I think the Rams are just too good. And even if they do get down, I can see them still crawling back and winning.
Yeah, and then there's like the conference championship game they had against the 49ers. It's like, that's what happens when you try me with the sorry receiver like Crabtree. I'm the best corner in the game. You have that iconic moment from Richard Sherman. The concern I have with the Rams this game is them running the ball, especially against the San Francisco 49ers front. But I think Sean McVay is savvy enough to come up with a few solutions for that, but I just don't know if they'll be able to run the ball up the middle of the field. They didn't necessarily need to against the Chicago Bears, and the Bears haven't had the best defense per se, but they have had one of the best defenses as far as forcing turnovers, and Stafford did not turn the ball over in Chicago, especially coming off kind of a wonky game versus the Panthers, so it seemed like he definitely improved as far as just ball security, and then just doing exactly what he needed to do to win that game, and that's at the end of the day, that's gonna win you games in the playoffs. Just taking what the defense gives you.
Yeah. Plus, this is going to be a warmer climate. I feel like in the Chicago game, it was tough getting the ball out. There were some throws that Matt Stafford doesn't normally miss that he did. This game is going to be much more normal temperature. It's going to be 50 degrees in Seattle. That's going to bode a lot better for them. Yeah, it's going to be like 50 degrees there compared to 5 in Chicago. So that alone, I think, is going to be a big advantage for them, because if there's anything I could point to in that Bears game is that you could just tell that the Rams players were cold. Matt Stafford didn't have the same snap on the ball that he normally has. This game, with the weather not being a factor, with it just being a normal game, I think the Rams get that win.
You know, he's dealing with the finger injury too when he hit his guy in the helmet in the Panthers game, so he should be a little bit healthier this week from that. And then, like, too, the game that the Panthers won was, you had that 2-point conversion, but was it?
I don't think it was. I don't think anybody thinks it was, but nonetheless, I'm glad that we got a trilogy. I think this is probably the best matchup we could have asked for. I think Chicago played as good of a game as they possibly could, but the Rams, I think, are the biggest test for the Seahawks. This might be their kryptonite, this game. If it's Chicago, I feel like I would have leaned Seattle had they have won. But the Rams, they know them very well. They play them twice a year. They know what they're getting. So I think they'll be able to take advantage.
Yeah, but should be a really interesting matchup. I can't, because in the Super Bowl, I can't think of like a time we had like two of the MVP candidates match up against each other in the Super Bowl. I know we had last year Josh Allen and Lamar matched up against each other, but this year we're going to have Drake May and Stafford. And typically the MVP does not win the Super Bowl. So if Stafford does end up winning the NFL honors, that history does not bode well for him going on to win the Super Bowl.
I'm looking it up right now, and it's very rare that we have two MVPs, but it's happened a few times before. It hasn't happened since the 90s, though, because if we go far back, we had Ken Anderson versus Joe Montana. Joe Montana lost the MVP candidate. Ken Anderson won, and then we had Jim
Did
McMahon.
Joe Montana win the Super Bowl?
Joe Montana won, but Ken Anderson won the MVP.
Okay.
And then we had two MVP candidates in the 80s with the Bears and Patriots. Neither won in that scenario. And then Jim Kelly, he didn't win the MVP nor the Super Bowl. And then we had Brett Favre and Drew Bledsoe, but Brett Favre won the MVP. So that was like the last time I think any MVP has won the Super Bowl. So it's going to be interesting to see. Head to head, it's very rare that it ever happens in that scenario.
Yeah, I think like since 2011, we've had either the Chiefs or the Patriots in the conference championship. Is it the past 15 years? Because I think the last time the Patriots weren't in the conference championship was because 2010 the Steelers made the Super Bowl, and that was Jets and Steelers. So since 2011, we've had either the Chiefs or the Patriots in the conference championship.
Yeah, which is insane. I looked, so ChatGPT, the only clear answer that we had was Mahomes and Jalen Hurts in 2022. So this will be the first time since 2022 that we have the top two MVP candidates making the Super Bowl against each other. And then obviously Mahomes won it, that scenario, and the MVP that year.
Yeah, he swept it because he got Super Bowl MVP too.
Yeah, so we got it all. But it'll be. I hope that it ends up being Rams and Patriots. I think that's the best matchup for America. So it should be interesting. But 2 weeks from now, Super Bowl. I can't wait to see it.
$8,000 if you want to go. We were looking at Super Bowl tickets when it was looking like the Patriots might get there. When Bo Nix was down, it was like $8,000 per ticket. So
We'll be there someday.
if you want to be if you're homeless for like half the year, and then you could save up the same amount in rent to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Sorry, Mom. I got to move back in. I got to get some rent money. I got to get Super Bowl money.
Gotta
Why
get
not,
Super
right?
Bowl tickets. But
Yeah.
yeah, we had the other thing was Tony Romo. Did you hear when he called Josh Allen Mahomes in the middle of the game?
Yeah.
Like, is
Terrible.
this the last straw for this guy? Like, just hire Mike Tomlin to replace him because every time the Bills started losing, he just stopped talking. He was like, "Well, they still have a chance, Jim." And as soon as Josh Allen stopped winning, he like kept making the case. He's like, "Well, even if the Bills, they don't like even if they win the Super Bowl this year and there's no Mahomes, Allen, or Lamar, he still beat all of them in the regular season." I'm like, yeah, we get it. He still beats them in the regular season every year, but loses to them in the playoffs. But he was like making excuse, and then he literally calls him Patrick Mahomes in the middle of the game.
The fall off of Tony Romo between year one to now has been something that needs to be documented much closer because he has very quickly become the worst announcer by far. When I saw that he had the Josh Allen game, the Bills and Broncos game, it was awful. Luckily, it was loud at that bar, thank God. But it's just always been. I feel like if you're going to be an announcer, you can't have one angle or another for them. That's why I've appreciated they put Brady on. They had him do the Niners and Seahawks game, one where he's impartial on. Just like if you're going to be announcing a game, like you shouldn't have one lean or another. I just feel like it's bad for the sport and it's bad for the opposing fans either. Like when I was watching Red Sox Yankees in October and it was all Yankees, it was just so frustrating. And if I was a Broncos fan watching that, I would have been throwing my television remote at the screen, hearing him talk.
Yeah, because he was like, yeah, Bo Nix has played well. But anyways, Josh Allen, when he makes the Super Bowl, it's going to be so amazing and great. And people complain about Chris Collinsworth, but I've never been annoyed with Chris Collinsworth because he kind of has that like southern, like either like grandfather or uncle where it's kind of like chill and charming. Like Tony Romo's just straight up annoying. Where Chris Collinsworth, yeah, he talks about Mahomes. The only difference is Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league. And I get people are annoyed. Tony Romo, the difference is he talks about Josh Allen like he is Patrick Mahomes. And he is the best quarterback in the league. Where now Josh Allen's probably like four. I'm not putting him over Stafford at this point in the playoffs. Stafford's been to a Super Bowl, won a Super Bowl. He's back in the conference championship at this point right now. Burrow hasn't been healthy, but I still think Burrow overall. And then if Drake May gets to a Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts has also been to a Super Bowl twice and won it. So it's like I can't even put Josh Allen in the top three as far as quarterbacks, but he talks about him like he's Mahomes, and the way he talks about him is just more annoying. Where it's like, yeah, if one of these teams wins, they have a chance to win the next game. It's like, oh, what crazy analysis, Tony Romo. If they win this game, they have a chance to win the next game. I can't believe it. Where Chris Collinsworth is kind of like, wow, I love Mahomes, and like, it's just different. I feel like.
It's charming. No, I love Chris Collinsworth. Yeah, he glazes Mahomes, and yeah, he glazes Allen, but I feel like he just glazes everybody. Like, if they're playing good football, he's going to shout that out, which I think is good. We like to see that. But if you're just so star-centric on Allen or Mahomes or Lamar or whoever's playing, it's just nauseating for the other team. Where Collinsworth, like, I saw him shout out Bo Nix a few times in the postseason and in regular season games. We've seen him shout out CJ Stroud. We've seen him shout out a lot of other quarterbacks. Mahomes is obviously his favorite, which I think a lot of people have him as his favorite anyways. But I just feel like he's a lot more celebratory of the game than just to those two stars.
Yeah. But Tony Romo doesn't seem like he watches other games besides the Bills. He's like, yeah, this player's great. Anytime I watch the film, he jumps off the screen. It's like, yeah, that's because you only watch Bills games. And like, I feel like they should have put the Monday crew on that game with Troy Aikman and Joe Buck, and then made Tony Romo do the Patriots and Texans game because he would have had no idea who anyone was.
Yeah, it would have been better. But nonetheless, I wish he just wasn't announcing games because he makes it worse. And I have to mute the game when he's because the thing also, like, outside of him just glazing Josh Allen, he also just doesn't shut the fuck up the entire game. He just talks in the play, during the play, after the play. He just never he doesn't contribute much to it either. he's just yapping the entire time. And if you've ever watched a game with somebody in attendance that maybe also wasn't shutting the fuck up, and now you have the announcer who's yapping, it just makes for a bad sports watching experience.
The fact that he like calls Jim Nantz buddy too is so infuriating. Like, oh,
Yeah,
great call out, buddy. He's like,
yeah,
Phil
yeah.
Simms would never. I used to be annoyed with Troy Aikman, but when I listen to Tony Romo and then Troy Aikman is like a god at announcing comparatively.
Yeah, honestly, the most underappreciated announcement crew is Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. Those
Yeah.
guys, everyone wants to hate on Joe Buck, but yet Joe Buck has all these iconic announcements, whether it's the NFL or baseball. Troy Aikman, he's just an appreciator of the game compared to like Tony Romo, who's just yammering the whole time. That crew gets so much hate for no reason, and I don't respect it.
Yeah, and people jumped all over Drew Brees and like bullied him about it. And like people are even talking about Tom Brady and sure, like is Tom Brady like a little bit Captain Obvious sometimes, but he's way more analytical and he's like way more coherent. And then he also like includes I feel like he's a lot more inclusive of like the crew where Tony Romo he's like one of those people if you've ever been around who can only hear themselves talking and if someone else is saying something it's like you can just tell there's nothing there, they're not computing anything you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. But it should be interesting, these two games. We got Rams and Patriots potentially for the Super Bowl. And it's been a great playoff run. That Bears and Rams game was excellent. Bills and Broncos, that was great. Even the Patriots Texans game was great to some extent defensively. But this playoff, I feel like we've been spoiled throughout with just great games all around.
Yeah, great games all around. Great games to watch. And when you're in LA or on the plane, did you get a chance to watch or listen to anything?
Actually, you're gonna really laugh at the movie that we ended up watching after the Bears and Rams game. We ended up putting on the Ripoff, which is the new Matt
The Rip.
Damon, yeah,
Nice.
the new Matt Damon and Ben Affleck movie, and I just felt like they put into ChatGPT make a movie with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck and make a plot for it, because otherwise, like the movie was just super predictable. It's basically just two guys who are investigating, or they basically do a house siege and find that this person is money laundering $20 million. And so the whole time they're just basically going back and forth. Is Matt Damon stealing the money? Is he not? Who's the rat in the workforce? It's a movie that's made with like no love at all. It's just, oh, let's put these two icons together because they've done all these movies together and call it a day. But the movie has no soul. There's no, I wouldn't say it's a bad movie. It's just such slop from Netflix where you know exactly what's going to happen throughout the entire movie. They have to remind you of the plot over and over again, what's going on. You don't build any rapport with the characters. Matt Damon's character isn't necessarily likable. Ben Affleck is the typical asshole New England guy that he is in every other Matt Damon and Ben Affleck movie. So, would I recommend it? I guess you can watch it, but it's just there's so much better Ben Affleck than Matt Damon movies that don't bother. It's like 2 hours of most predictable crime nonsense that you could expect. It's AI slop is what I would call it.
Yeah, I saw someone post like this is the first collaboration that Ben Affleck and Matt Damon have had that hasn't had a cultural impact.
I guess, yeah, that is true. It
Because
just
they did Air recently, like, and that was a
yeah,
really good movie. A lot of people like that. They have Goodwill Hunting that they obviously wrote together. I forget, like, off the top of my head, like the other movies that they've done specifically together. I know they were on Joe Rogan to promote this movie, and it's funny you say that they had to like reiterate the plot a lot because Matt Damon specifically said that for streaming, because people are on their phones and they're semi distracted. It's like he said on the podcast that you have to reiterate the plot 3 to 4 times. And then
that's
Ben
exactly
Affleck also said for this movie that it wasn't even a script that they wrote. Someone brought the script to them for this movie.
hmm
So he's just like directed
makes
someone
sense.
else's.
It makes perfect sense. Yeah. No, like this movie, the script is kind of bland. There's not really any character in the movie at all. It just feels like they built the script on ChatGPT. They edited it. The directing for it, like it was just kind of lazy. Was all I can really say. Again, like when I say it's a bad movie, I don't think it's like terrible. It's not like unwatchable, but 81% on Rotten Tomatoes, I would strongly disagree there. It's just average. It's okay. It's fine, but it's really nothing to get excited for. Nothing amazing whatsoever. They didn't even direct it either. It wasn't just them. Like they produced it, but it's just not. There's so much better Ben Affleck and Matt Damon movies that why would you watch this one?
Yeah, and like too, when I was like listening to it, like they started the podcast and Joe Rogan's like, "Wow, this movie's like so like original. Like I've seen like a lot of movies like this, but you guys had like such a fresh take on it, and it was like such a great movie." And they were like, "Oh, thanks." Like they thought it was a bad movie, and like in their reaction to it, and I guess he's just like one of those people. He's kind of like a hippie, smokes pot all the time. So it's like, oh wow, that's crazy. It's like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. The funniest part too is he asked Ben Affleck about like AI and like people like having AI written movies and how that's gonna affect it. And then Ben Affleck was like, well, the thing with AI is it's super average because it pretty much like takes from like the mean for everything that it does. So like everything it's gonna give you is gonna be like an average answer, and that was kind of how he was explaining it. So it's like it'll be good for like certain things, but like with writing it'll always be average. So it'll probably never be used for like script, and that's why they had the whole writers' strike a year or two ago was because of that. And then you turn around and say it feels like this movie was written by AI. So it's kind of funny. And then the quote from Matt Damon saying you have to reiterate the plot 3 to 4 times went viral from that podcast.
Yeah, and that everything that they said in that movie, like I can just tell that they didn't really care for this too much, but they kind of have to promote it. But it just feels to me like the reason why this movie was made is so that they could say that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck make another movie together, which like again, they've done like how many movies together now? Like it's not that crazy to me to see them together. We've already seen them in Good Will Hunting, which is a way better movie. So it just felt like, oh, Netflix, let's make a movie with these two guys and see what happens. Let's not care about the plot. Let's not care about the characters. None of the characters in this movie are likable either. And you know exactly who the rat is. They make it very obvious who the rat is throughout the entire. You're like, oh, he's the guy that's calling people outside away from them. I wonder if he's the rat. Turns out
It's a
he's the
Matt
rat. Who
Damon.
would have thought? It wasn't Matt. No, it was some. I forget his. I think it's Stephen Kwan or whatever. I got to look at the
Oh, Steven
casting, but
Yeun, the
Stephen
guy who
Yeun.
played
Yeah, it
Glenn
was
in The
Stephen.
Walking Dead.
Yeah, it was Stephen Yeun. I'm like, the whole time he's being suspicious and calling random people and answering texts, and they're like, "Oh, he's the rat." It's like, yeah, no shit. The whole movie, it's been gearing up. You would think that there was like this gotcha moment. There's really not. The gotcha moment was like, "Hey, I'm not the rat, but actually I'm the rat." Haha. And that was the conclusion. It was so lazy. It's just slop. It's literally I can only call it slop because that's all it was. It's
Yeah.
fine. It's serviceable, but it's not great.
Yeah, Goy Slop is a good rating for sure.
Goy slop. Did you avoid Goyslop this week?
I did. I actually watched a really good movie that I had not seen before that was made in 1996, and that was Fargo. I haven't seen too
Fargo.
many of the Coen brothers movies, and it was kind of like a late night Friday. We popped this movie on, and I had not seen it before, and it has Steve Buscemi in this movie. I forget who plays like the main cop in this movie, but it takes place in like Minnesota and North Dakota, and it's based off of a true story. They changed like all the names of the characters, but essentially, you have this guy who pays Steve Buscemi and the other guy in this movie to kidnap his wife so they can collect the ransom money, and then they're gonna split it, and then kind of that's where the plot ensues from there. And then while they're kidnapping her, they end up getting pulled over by a cop because they don't have the plates, and then they end up just leaving her in the back of the car, so they have to shoot the cop, and then there's a witness that sees them like dragging the cop out into a field, so they have to track them down and shoot them. So that essentially creates a murder investigation, and then they link it to the wife being kidnapped as well. But it takes place in North Dakota and Minnesota, and just like saying that, they turn the accent up to an 11. And the Coen brothers said they did it on purpose to seem more like folklore-y, but literally they play up the, oh yeah, oh sorry about that, yeah, okay,
That's sick.
yeah, definitely. So like the whole movie, they're like talking like this, and I'm like, this seems like very over the top. I asked ChatGPT, I'm like, did they do this on purpose? And like the Coen brothers just wanted it to seem like more folklore, just set the atmosphere, and it's like one of those really cool, like snowy, kind of subdued like character movies, and it hit. Like this is probably one of the top movies I've watched so far this year. It's been like pretty short, but it was 96, and then there wasn't really a dull moment in this movie. It keeps you on your toes. It's like a little bit anticlimactic. There's one part where they're like putting a body through a wood chipper, which is pretty fun, but overall, it was a good time.
Now, like I know you watched Misery a couple of weeks ago, and I know they're very different movies, but did you see like any sort of? Are you kind of in like that wintry crime kind of phase right now, where like just kind of finding movies like that, classics like that? Because I don't think they're
Yeah.
similar movies by any means, but they're similar in the sense that they're both set in the cold, and there's some sort of crime to solve in that scenario.
Yeah, it's like one of my favorite types of movies. It's just like a snowy, like crime movie. Wind River is another really good movie on Netflix with Jeremy Renner that came out. That one takes place and it's on like an Indian reservation where he's trying to solve a murder, and that's like near Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Like I like that movie a lot. It was really good when it came out. Like a movie like The Revenant, Hateful Eight. Like that's kind of like my favorite atmospheric wise. It's like just kind of puts you in a cozy mood, especially for a late night movie. It just
Yeah,
hits.
and the wintertime too. I was about to shout out The Hateful Eight. That's a good movie to rewatch. I feel like it's good to rewatch every few years.
But yeah, I've just been trying to go back and watch like some of the classic movies that I missed. So like some of the movies from like the 90s or like the 80s. Like Misery was another older movie that I had heard good things about that I hadn't watched, and then had heard a lot of good things about Fargo, and I think I'm going to watch the show because I've heard really good things about the show for it as well. And that one is like an anthology show where each season is a different story, and it's
Hmm.
all kind of set in that upper Midwest setting. Even the John Wayne Gacy show took place in Chicago, so it's kind of that Midwest setting as well. So like that kind of like kicked off like what I've been watching recently. And then when we were on our road trip, we had watched Wind River, which was really good. But this one's a good time. Like the writing is really good. Like the over the top Minnesota accent. Steve Buscemi is also really funny in this movie, where there's like two different people that they're interviewing, and they're trying to describe Steve Buscemi, and they're like, "Can you tell me anything about him?" And they're like, "Oh, he was really funny looking." And they're like, "Okay, anything else?" Like, "No, just a funny looking guy."
That's funny. Yeah, I definitely got to check it out. I've seen a couple of their movies. I saw um, The Big Lebowski. They've done like
Brother, we're
Intolerable
out though.
Cruelty. Yeah, like they're a good cat. They're pretty consistent with their catalog. I feel like, especially like Fargo was one of them. The Ballad of Buster Scruggs was fun. That was like one of the first Netflix movies that kind of was really successful for them. I feel like their success rate. They also did No Country for Old Men, which was one of the greatest movies ever. So I feel like their success rate's pretty high. I feel like they're one of those directors that when you see that they make a movie, chances are you're in for a good one.
Yeah, I definitely like this movie better than No Country for Old Men. Personally, I think that movie's a little bit overrated. Like, I think Javier Bardem's like as a character actor is really good in that movie, but the ending just didn't do it for me. And it's kind of just one of those movies I had to like watch it twice to really kind of figure out it kind of figure out what it's about. And I know people love that movie, but it's like really well done. But when people say like greatest movie of all time, like I don't know about that.
It's definitely a great movie, though, no doubt. They got some good casting there, but we are in for a battle this upcoming Sunday. 2 more days of football left. Cherish them as they can. We recapped the divisional round. We previewed the championship round. We are here to cover everything come next week for our Super Bowl preview. Most importantly of all, stay brick.
Saber.